A blinding, incredibly bright light pursued the young girl. Opening her mouth in a silent scream, she could only watch as this glow slowly but surely consumed her. A weak, barely perceptible pulse, and a quiet squeak coming from the cardiograph. Hospital walls, for the girl lay unconscious in the bed. Life in her weak body was supported by an oxygen mask. A dark-haired guy bent over her, stroked his pale and cold-to-the-touch face and straightened his thick bangs. His sister always liked to go against her brother, and now she doesn't even react to his bullying. It's so uninteresting. The stranger barely whispered bitter words, only now, when his sister definitely couldn't hear him, did he find the courage to admit that she was not the only one in the family whose abilities had awakened. He himself woke up, and now he came for a reason, or rather, not only to check on his unconscious sister. His ability is stealing. The guy can steal the abilities of others. And now a soft blue pearl was flickering above the girl's head. D-rank ability Steal Complete Mental Blast. Sends a mental blast to attack enemies. Weak, but it's a sister ability and has a special meaning. The pearl levitated above the guy's palm. He was surprised at the acquisition, because if it was stronger, then Trisha would not have instantly turned into an ice statue from an unintentional attack. The guy wondered if it was really unintentional, because the distance to Trisha was so far. Screams were heard from the corridor. Female and male voices vied with each other, shouting, calling someone a murderer. They were objected to. They were told that that person had saved more people. They called to calm down, because it is impossible to control everything at once. It so happened that Miss Sinclair was just in that store. It was the mother and father of a brother and sister. The lawyer of the man who almost killed their daughter was now defending him, saying that they did not want this, because heroes are not gods, and they are already trying their best. Sometimes they can accidentally harm others while fighting the monster. The woman sadly covered her face with her hands. Her husband threw the documents from the lawyer on the floor and shouted that he would not sign these papers. Let him take his stinking money and get lost. A drop of sweat ran down the lawyer's temple. He vividly imagined what consequences awaited his client. The next moment, the door to the hospital room slammed, and the guy's hand reached out to the tablet with documents. His father tried to reason with his son, appealing to reason. Does he really want to exchange Trisha's life for money? But he put his hand on the man's shoulder and squeezed lightly, answering that his sister was in a vegetative state, and their family needed money to provide their sister with everything she needed. Although conflicting feelings fought within my father, he did not answer. The words immediately stuck in his throat. While the parents hugged each other and tried to console each other, their son demanded additional conditions from the lawyer. The man, soaring in spirit, leaned forward with interest. The guy wanted the hero who harmed his sister to apologize in person, face to face. Moreover, the Burkshire company should also make an official apology. The lawyer's plump body shook with disappointment, and he asked if it would be possible to apologize on his behalf. But the guy answered firmly, the hero needs to come here in person. The lawyer began to apologize profusely. The A-rank hero's schedule is overloaded. David Evans Jr. would like to personally apologize, but he is too busy fighting and cannot come here in person. In addition, they are willing to pay 100,000 more as compensation. His interlocutor grinned when he heard the proposal. Quickly scribbling on the papers with a pen, he, without looking at the lawyer, handed over the tablet, who ingratiatingly accepted the documents. The windows of the multi-story hospital illuminated the empty street. The lawyer, in high spirits, called the client to inform him that he had settled everything. He only had to add another 100,000 in compensation. At the other end of the line, a smiling guy, drinking a soda, praised the man, promising that his secretary would send the money later. The lawyer hung up the phone and chuckled. Yes, heroes like to relax. If only he could awaken his ability too. The brunette returned to his sister's bed, and, as if she could hear him, asked not to be blamed for signing the contract, especially in such conditions, but the sister should not worry. He will find out the whole truth because he does not believe that it was all unintentional. Clutching his coat in his hands, the guy promised that he would change this world, because some awakened ones are not worthy of being called heroes. The guy's name was Adam Sinclair. He worked as a trainee reporter, and his sister Trisha, according to eyewitnesses and the savior himself, was unintentionally harmed by an A-rank hero. To implement his plan, Adam moved away from his parents to another area. In Albuquerque, the guy will be able to carry out his plans without disturbing his grief-stricken parents. Adam rented a room in a small dorm, and now, Entering the common living room, he met two girls. Sitting on the sofa, she immediately introduced herself and her friend, a pretty blonde. Another neighbor was not home yet. The girls' names were Mary Perry and Karen Walt. The latter, a little older, asked what his name was. The guy introduced himself with a bored look. Mary smiled sweetly and offered to celebrate the arrival of a new housemate, because this did not happen often. Karen said she would be in the library since she had just started university, so they could have fun without her. Adam turned around with his suitcase and went into the room, answering on the fly that this was not necessary. He had only recently arrived here, was tired, and wanted to rest. The girls looked at him with puzzled looks. The guy, without unpacking his suitcase or taking off his outerwear, fell onto the bed with his arms outstretched. Then he took out his mobile phone and went to a video hosting site, turned on a video where heroes fight monsters. Quite a lot of people have already watched it. He noticed that many videos had appeared explaining the abilities, when a black portal, with bright lightning around it, appeared on the phone screen that someone had filmed in the sky. Adam did not remember when this happened, but dark portals suddenly began to appear all over the world, through which monsters arrived on the planet. For example, huge saber-toothed wolves with glowing eyes, as if enlarged several times by the force of a net. The planet could stop the invasion of these monsters only thanks to those with abilities. Those who were lucky were called heroes and idly faded at every victory, like celebrities on carpets, where in the case of heroes there were destroyed roads. To prevent hunters from abusing their abilities, the ability law was passed, which stated that only hunters who passed the test and were certified as a hero could use their abilities. Taking a closer look, the brunette realized that he was watching the video in which Trisha was wounded by the hero. Adam exhaled heavily and locked the screen of his mobile phone. Now he didn't find anything suspicious. It's better to study the video again tomorrow. Accidentally glancing at the screen and seeing the time, the guy realized it was already 3:30 in the morning, and he still needed to brush his teeth and wash his face, because a lot of work was planned for tomorrow. The brunette quietly slipped out of the room, throwing a towel around his neck, and carrying a glass of toothpaste and a brush in his hands. Suddenly he heard a noise ahead, and suddenly raised his head. A dark-haired girl walked from her room, clinging to the wall and barely moving her feet. The guy immediately guessed that this was the last neighbor. The stranger did not notice anything around her, and was clearly out of her mind. It seemed that she was completely drunk, judging by her blush. Adam said hello according to all the rules of etiquette. The girl tried to answer him something, but immediately covered her mouth with her hand, trying to stop gagging, then very quickly asked permission to be the first to use the restroom. The guy didn't even think to object to her. Before she could close the door, she fell to her knees in front of the toilet and threw out the entire contents of her stomach there. After a few minutes she felt much better. The neighbor turned away and put her elbow on the headband to sit more comfortably and probably fall asleep in this position. Adam immediately reached out to her, asking if everything was okay. Then he hesitated, stopped, thinking about something. A man should not come too close to a girl in such a state. He knocked on the door of another neighbor, Mary Perry. She opened the door, yawning, and with her eyes closed asked why little Adam was not sleeping when it was already so late. He apologized for the disturbance and explained the situation, offering to help the drunk girl, because he, a man, was not very comfortable offering his help. Mary, yawning widely again, waved her hand because this was not the first time. It was better to leave her there, especially since it was already very late, and she had to get up for work tomorrow morning. A moment later, the door slammed in the brunette's face. It seemed that only he could help the girl. Returning to the bathroom, he found her sitting in the same position. He apologized, but rather to himself, since the neighbor was clearly fast asleep. Adam picked her up and immediately felt it. The brain overload ability had been discovered. So the discovery, this girl is the owner of an F-rank ability. Brain overload puts the brain into overdrive for a short period of time, greatly increasing the brain's processing abilities, an ability the owner doesn't seem to know she has, although she feels like she has good potential for development. The guy carefully put his neighbor on the sofa, covered him with his coat, and thought that this strange girl might think that she was very smart, and if she studied well, she would become the best. However, Adam decided to steal the ability. In the future he will definitely repay it somehow. Having successfully completed what he started, the brunette smiled to his thoughts. I wonder what effect this will have on him. 2 pearls, The mental abilities of brain overload and mental attack levitated on Sinclair's palms, and the system asked if he wanted to combine them. The guy said loudly, "Unite," and the pearls flew up, leaving colored trails in the air. Then they collided with each other, merging into one. The combination of abilities is completed. The red pearl fell into the brunette's palm. Now Adam had a D+ rank ability Superbrain, could automatically send mental attacks, received a significant increase in his ability to calculate and deduce. However, this ability must be used wisely. The guy thought he could find some clues in the video of the incident in which Trisha was injured. The next morning he was awakened by a knock on the door. Yawning loudly, Adam opened the door. Having finally woken up, he was dumbfounded when he saw his guest. The beautiful neighbor, whom he had carefully put to bed yesterday, now stood in front of him. Introducing herself, she handed over her coat and thanked him for his help. The guy was speechless for a second, admiring Lily Romero. Introducing himself in response, he noticed to himself that the neighbor looked very innocent. He realized that he had taken away her ability, even though Lily didn't know she had one, but still asked if the girl felt discomfort. She smiled sweetly, answering that everything was fine and there was no need to worry about her. Having accepted the coat, the guy returned the smile. "That's good." The front door suddenly opened and a plump guy, Adam's friend, walked into the hallway, loudly greeting him. Lily and Adam turned their heads sharply in his direction. The sudden guest opened his mouth at the sight of the charming girl. He pointed his finger at his friend and, without any embarrassment, shouted that he was meeting someone behind his back. The brunette immediately tried to justify himself, telling him not to talk nonsense, because this is his neighbor with whom he lives. Opening and closing his mouth like a fish, the guy thought that he had acted recklessly when he rented the entire apartment. He immediately smoothed his hair, coughed into his fist, and collected his thoughts. George Ripley, that was his name, was a friend and colleague of Adam. He extended his hand to the dumbfounded girl and introduced himself. She politely introduced herself in response and shook the outstretched hand, understanding what would follow. As expected, George, without letting go of the girl's hand, immediately offered the girl a photo shoot, because with the help of his ability to take photographs and shoot videos with his bare hands, he could take a couple of beautiful photographs. Lily didn't know how to get rid of such annoying attention. Fortunately, Adam came to her aid and pulled away his friend, impressed by the female beauty, citing the fact that Ripley had come to pick him up to take him to the editorial office, and they were on their way. The guy did not give up, and tried to return to the conversation with the beauty, but nothing worked out for him. The Louisville Publishing Company was in full swing. Adam did not waste time and turned on the desired video on the screen of his work monitor. There, a hero in a special elaborate costume was circling with might and main around a huge wolf. Using his ability, he released long magical ropes from his palms, and they pinned the monster to the ground, digging straight into his body. Superbrain deduction activated, the guy peered carefully at the screen. He analyzed what he saw with all his might, reading every movement and blow. Suddenly he tensed, and his eyes caught on something. Adam noticed the strange movement of the hero. He put his hand to his mouth, and the guy thought it was familiar. He didn't have time to fully understand what he had seen when George suddenly distracted him by nudging him, sitting down in a chair next to him, and cheerfully asked why Adam wasn't interested in flirting with girls, especially with such a beautiful girl like Lily. Laughing, the guy assured that if his friend didn't start, he would do it himself. Adam did not appreciate the joke and replied that he and Lily were just neighbors. There was no need to go too far. Jolly George said that from flatmates to bedmates is very easy, and he can teach a friend if he doesn't know how. Suddenly, a crash and screams were clearly heard outside the window, signaling the appearance of a monster. Ripley instantly stuck to the glass. Not far from the editorial building, a portal opened in the sky, and from there, moving many pink tentacles, he appeared the one-eyed killer. Like a huge jellyfish, the monster walked through the city with the help of its appendages, destroying everything in its path. People ran away, desperately trying to escape. The one-eyed killer sank down, his disgusting body pulsating. At the same time, an announcement was heard from the loudspeakers. A monster has appeared, a B-rank disaster. Go to the nearest shelter, heroes are on the way. And indeed, jumping over the boulders of destroyed asphalt, one of the heroes appeared on the horizon. An athletic, large man in a red suit that covered his entire body slowly moved towards the monster. It was the superhero of hot and sour noodles, urging citizens not to be afraid. He would not allow anything to happen to the city of Louisville. The crowd stopped abruptly when they heard a familiar voice. It was the B-rank hero, the Superman of hot and sour noodles. He had come to save them. Compared to the one-eyed assassin, Superman looked very tiny. George read information about the monster using his ability, creating a tiny virtual screen right in his hands. The one-eyed killers have not only defensive power, but also a psychopathic melee ability. It will be very difficult for 18 spiders to cope with him, and the superhero noodles may even lose. The guy looked around and didn't see his friend. The thought flashed that Adam was running very fast. He pointed the camera and aimed with his eye, giggling, "Ordinary people are so weak. It's time to make some money with your ability." A fire butterfly flew over the Superman of hot and sour noodles, a hero of the C rank. A long-haired, red-haired girl in a tight jumpsuit that favorably emphasized her figure. The butterfly's wings were made of fire itself. She asked if the elder needed help. He, looking back, said that the girl had arrived on time. Let her attack the monster while he held him back. The fire butterfly flashed its eyes and nodded. Right now, there was a heroic live subscription broadcast all over the city, hosted by Director Jergery and Nicholas Roserf. The director commented on what was happening in a well-trained voice, as if he was not watching a bloody battle, but was sitting at a football match. The superhero of hot and sour noodles, a melee hero, was very selfish and narcissistic when he first appeared. His partner enthusiastically asked why Gregory was giving such feedback. He replied that to activate his ability, the hero needs to eat a bowl of hot and sour noodles, so he usually appears after the other heroes have already exhausted the monster, and then kills it. Nicholas Roserf laughed, saying that as expected of a director, he always divulges information that other people don't know. The man coughed into his fist and suggested stopping the chatter and watching the live broadcast of the battle. It seems that everything was not going so smoothly. The hero jumped and, as planned, flew straight onto the monster's body. He clenched his teeth, running his elbow as hard as he could right into the one-eyed assassin. They were immediately surrounded by many golden butterflies. The fire butterfly flew closer and shouted to the elder to move aside. Generating flames in her hand, she pointed her hand directly at the monster. A second later, a powerful stream of fire fell on the alien. He was pinned to the ground. The tentacles began to tremble in pain. Commentators debated, looking at the screen, whether the monster's life was coming to an end or not. Nicholas looked in surprise at the director, who doubted victory, and asked why. The man replied that monsters are also smart, and he did not see a single sign of anxiety in this monster. The superheroes stood nearby, watching the one-eyed killer burn in flames. There was a crackling sound and the flames split into pieces. A safe and sound killer crawled out from there, changing the color and shape of his body. The hero of hot and sour noodles cursed. The alien has evolved, and now his body has a fire-resistant shield. The butterfly tearfully asked him to hold out longer, because some time would pass before the others arrived. The man lowered his head, remembering the conversation that was important to him. The head, sitting at the table, lectured the superhero. He had already reached the peak of his career as a professional hero. If he wants to break through and become one of the most famous stars of the company, then he can no longer lose. Because if he fails, his fame will decrease. Resources will go to younger heroes. The hero of hot and sour noodles firmly decided that he would never lose his place in the company. Adam stood very close to the thick of things and peered anxiously at the heroes. It did not escape a careful glance that the superhero of hot and sour noodles, unnoticed by the others, quickly swallowed some kind of blue glowing pill. Adam opened his eyes. He had already seen such a pill once. At that moment, the tentacle grabbed the fire butterfly in its vise. She, calling on the elder, tried to get out of the grip. The townspeople could see with their own eyes how the heroine, wrapped in a huge tentacle, was weakening. Some commented on what was happening. The one-eyed killer threw the butterfly, tightly bound in his paws, up, and she screamed heart-rendingly, with the last of her strength, that she did not want to die. Suddenly, one of the monster's tentacles was torn in half. The huge eye looked around the space around itself in bewilderment. The stranger was confused and released his prey. The butterfly was immediately picked up by the superhero of hot and sour noodles, landing heavily on the asphalt. In the studio, Nicholas Roserf slammed his fist on the table in joy. He exclaimed admiringly into the microphone that this superhero could only stay in fighting shape for 15 minutes. But this time he lasted, and became even stronger than before. The guy rose from his seat and triumphantly raised his fist up. The hero has not aged yet. Gregory straightened his tie. Apparently he was embarrassed for his judgment. The man muttered that this was quite unexpected. Before he could finish speaking, his colleague was glued to the screen, screaming that the one-eyed killer was attacking the hero of hot and sour noodles. Right now, the alien and the hero were opposite each other. The one-eyed monster was the first to rush towards his opponent, but his tentacles collided with a bright blue glow, the superpower of the hero hot and sour noodles. The man flew forward, electrified, glowing with power, and mockingly asked if this was really all the monster was capable of. Something was brewing. Superman decided to finish off the one-eyed killer with his main weapon. The monster's eye became twice as large after seeing what he was about to experience. Hot and sour kick in action. Having hit his target with a direct hit, the hero immediately flew away in the opposite direction. He landed on the asphalt and didn't even turn around. He knew that behind his back the alien was being torn to pieces by superpower. Suddenly the man doubled over, blood spraying from his mouth. Hot and sour noodle Superman collapsed to the ground with his head hanging low. The monster had long since died, dismembered in two, and his partner immediately ran up to the eldest. But the winner turned sharply. Thick veins appeared on his face. His eyes burned with a bright light. The fire butterfly was horrified and screamed loudly. She grabbed the older man's shoulder, asking what had happened to him. But the man did not answer. He clenched his teeth. He understood that he had to control it. Seconds later, the hero of hot and sour noodles regained his composure. Smiling from ear to ear, he awkwardly scratched the back of his head, telling Butterfly that it was okay. He was just using too much of his powers. She calmed down, but the man really scared her. Both heroes seemed to be walking along the red carpet, while a happy crowd of gratitude shouted after them and declared their love with might and main. Adam, who had been watching the progress of the battle from his hiding place, was about to leave. When it was all over, he was thinking that he had completely forgotten about the blue pill, and he would still need to prepare the news. At that moment, out of the corner of his eye, he saw some movement right next to the body of the defeated alien. The guy turned and looked carefully in that direction. It turned out that a very tiny clone of the one-eyed killer remained in the womb of the murdered man. Adam belatedly realized that he was moving in big leaps in his direction. His physical and elemental defenses are so high that maybe his mental attack will be his weak point. The clone, jumping closer and closer to the brunette, threatened revenge on the hero of sour and spicy noodles. And when he finds a master, he will absorb his energy. Suddenly his gaze fell on Adam, and he chose him as his master. The guy didn't seem to be worried at all. He was just surprised that the clone sent himself here. The brunette grinned. Well, since the prey is in hand, it means it's worth getting his ability. Sinclair extended his hands, activating his stealing powers. The little monster stopped, sensing the force from outside, and the next moment he fell headfirst, dead. The flow of energy did not escape the attention of the fire butterfly. She immediately realized that someone was using her ability. Adam grabbed the dead one-eyed killer by the body and squeezed it in his palm. It's good that he was just a weak clone, but even his weakness was mental attacks. The mental attack of AD plus rank guy could not kill the monster instantly. The guy began to extract the ability, and soon the blue pearl was already floating into his hand. The ability that had so easily left the alien's body levitated above the palm. Ability of rank B Fireproof Shield. Gives immunity to fire attacks below rank B, significantly increases physical defense, a very useful tank ability. Adam noticed with delight how his entire body was illuminated with a bright glow. Did this really mean that the ability acted on him like an invisible shell covering the surface of the body? He held the orange and blue pearls in his palms, and thought that no matter how strong an ability was, it would always have a weak point. This popular phrase in the world of abilities did not seem to have any effect on him. Meanwhile, the fire butterfly flew low over the houses, looking for a source of energy. Adam heard her scream and quickly hid around the corner. It was not yet time for the heroes to find out about him. The girl disappointedly sat down on the asphalt just not far from the guy. She felt a sharp surge of psychic energy here and definitely saw someone. A man in a mechanical rooster mask came out from the shadows to her. His whole body was covered by a long cloak with a gold brooch. He asked if the heroine was looking for him. Fire Butterfly turned around and in turn asked if he had just used his ability. Sinclair stepped into the light, walking with his metal suit through the puddles. His mask was reflected in the water, shining in the sun. They stood quite far from each other. The girl carefully asked if the stranger was a hero, because she had not seen him before. Throwing the one-eyed killer clone aside like a ball, Adam said that he was just a passerby who helped her clean up. The butterfly stared in surprise at the dead alien at her feet. Could this really be a clone of the one-eyed killer? Looking up at the stranger, the girl thought, how amazing it was that he was able to finish off such a strong and dangerous monster in an instant. But he is not a hero, and should not use his powers without permission. Adam was about to pass by, and politely asked permission, but the heroine put her hand in front of him, urging him to stop. She pressed her chest directly into the guy's cloak and screamed that he was illegally using his ability, which means he would have to follow her to the Hero Association for verification. Singular, to her surprise, tooted impatiently. A low voice, muffled because of the mask, asked Butterfly if she really thought she could stop him. The heroine immediately flew into the air, spreading the flames around. The stranger's actions are contrary to the law of abilities, and by law she has the right to take action against him. Fire Butterflies surrounded Adam. He asked if this is really what heroes should do to ordinary people. Suddenly the guy grabbed the wing of one of the butterflies with his fingers, and the next moment, the stunned heroine watched as the stranger squeezed his palm forcefully. All that was left of the defeated butterfly was smoke. The guy turned his head to the girl. Is it really now his turn to attack? It worked, and within a second the fire butterfly was already high in the sky. As she flew away, she shouted an apology that it was not her fault, and there was no need to kill her. Adam's memory flashed back to the moment when the superhero of hot and sour noodles swallowed the blue pill, as well as the hero's gesture on the glacier were those two doing the same thing. The guy took off his mask and firmly told himself that he would definitely find out the whole truth. The calm of the night in the city of Louisville was disturbed by the sounds of an elevated train. Adam sat on the bench, thinking that for now it was necessary to stop collecting abilities. We need to focus on developing a brain reboot. He closed his eyes, completely lost in thought about searching for information about the blue pill. The guy heard a man's voice very close. Opening his eyes, Adam automatically moved his hand along the seat next to him. Where the backpack lay, it was empty. The guy shuddered and for several seconds could not understand where he had gone. He jumped up, trying to find the thief, because there was a rooster suit in his backpack. The things were definitely stolen by the guy in the jacket passing by. Sinclair examined the entire carriage. The thief could not have disappeared, because they had not yet reached the station. Could he be someone with the power of invisibility? Then what about his scent? Adam activated Brain Reboot, enhanced senses, and immediately realized that the smell of the backpack was coming from a nearby guy. But the aura and clothes of the calmly standing stranger were completely different. This means that this is not invisibility. There may be some other ability to change appearance. However, the guy was not at all upset, because this ability came into his hands on its own, and would be very useful. Sinclair tirelessly followed the guy with bright hair through the night streets, keeping a safe distance. He whistled something under his breath. Today is harvest day. Suddenly he raised his eyes to the sky and thought that he felt strangely nervous. The thief turned around sharply and saw the very passenger from whom he stole the backpack. How could he expose him, and even begin to persecute him? Without thinking twice, the stranger took off and ran as fast as he could forward. Today he was clearly unlucky. The nearest hiding place was a public toilet. The brunette slammed the door open, loudly asking if the thief was going to use middle school tricks by hiding in the closet when he was too weak. There were no stalls in the men's restroom, and there was no stranger there either. The guy looked in surprise at the pink sign. Had the kidnapper really entered the women's restroom? Adam knocked on the door of the cubicle, from where a rustling sound was heard, and called for him to leave. A squeal was heard from there. He was called a pervert. Adam opened the door with his foot. It means he likes to do everything the wrong way. From the depths of the booth, at first glance, a female silhouette appeared. Toilet paper and a whole set of cosmetics instantly flew at the guy. All this was accompanied by cries for help. The brunette, in bewilderment, peeled off layers of paper. He admired the ability the thief had. He was even able to change his voice. Sitting hunched over on the toilet lid, the same guy was looking at him, but already in women's clothes, very open, a top, a short skirt and stockings with heels. The guy asked for forgiveness. This was his first experience of transformation. Adam said with disappointment that the ability cannot change the body and appearance. The thief almost cried. How unlucky he was. With a guilty look, he handed the backpack to the owner. He even tried to smile to smooth out the conflict. The first thing Sinclair did was open the backpack and make sure that the things were still there. Hanging over the stranger, he sternly asked if he had looked inside. But the guy, stuttering, replied that he had not even opened it. Adjusting his glasses on the bridge of his nose, the brunette advised him to find a normal job in the future and be a good person. Sitting on the toilet and clasping his hands in a prayer gesture, the thief assured that he would never steal again and thanked him for being spared this time. The answer to him was Adam's low, threatening voice and disappointment. No one was going to spare him. The booth lit up with a bright blue light, blinding the thief. Leaving the toilet and throwing the red pearl in his palms, the brunette remembered that he promised himself not to collect abilities anymore, but now he could not resist such a temptation. F-rank ability is change clothes anywhere. You can change clothes with one movement of your hand. It also comes with storage space. Sinclair did not hesitate and immediately used the acquisition on himself. He left the building in a new, expensive suit, changed his hairstyle and took off his glasses. Looking around himself, he smiled. What a convenient and useful ability. There were 2 policemen standing at the exit. They received a message from a citizen that someone was screaming in the women's toilets. Adam pointed his finger towards the restroom and replied that he heard screams, and even saw a pervert in disguise there. Looking after the half-naked thief, who was being led away by the police, the guy thought that some people with abilities did not deserve them. He must definitely correct this. A week passed. Echoes of music from the club sounded in the silence of the night. Adam drove up there in a taxi. He got out of the car and slammed the door. He was called to the meeting by George, who was standing nearby, greeting his friend. The brunette asked what he wanted, since he even had to call him here. Cheerful as always, Ripley put one arm around his shoulder and mysteriously asked him to guess who he had just seen in the nightclub. Adam muttered something, and his friend replied with a sly smile that his girlfriend Lily worked there as a maintenance worker. The brunette narrowed his eyes and asked not to call the neighbor his girlfriend anymore. Approaching the door, George's enthusiasm did not subside. He, in turn, asked to stop pretending, and that his friend would understand everything when he saw the performance with his own eyes. Loud music and darkness, diluted by bright flashes, blinded Sinclair. When both entered the club, Ripley called him to the nearest table. In a large human-sized cage, in a revealing bunny costume, she danced Lily Romero. Each dance movement was accompanied by an unambiguous rubbing of the rabbit's tail on the pole. The girl was the first to notice those entering and was stunned. She slowed down for a moment, panicking. What is her neighbor doing here? Adam sat with his hands on his knees. George carefully sipped a cocktail and consoled his friend. Don't be sad, there are still many beauties on Earth, and today he's on his, George's, territory, so let him sit and relax. There were sofas surrounding each table, forming a square for more people, so the guy raised his hand and loudly called someone over. 3 buxom workers looked at them, waving their hands enticingly. George introduced them to Adam in turn. Then he pointed to Sinclair himself and introduced him to the girls. They immediately surrounded the handsome guy, showering him with compliments, while George remained somewhere on the sidelines. Meanwhile, at the table next to them, someone loudly slammed a bottle of alcohol on the table. The young guy sat in a waddle, hugging the most beautiful workers. He complained that his brother took him McLaren, and that's why he lost to that brat Fred. On his right side was a couple, a local girl and a red-haired man named Michael Burse, the young guy's bodyguard. He replied that he simply lost the race, and there was no need to blame the car for that. His interlocutor was obviously very drunk, and was now laughing with all his might. Throwing his hands on the girl's shoulders, Zachary Wade said that the man became his bodyguard only because he could not get through to his father's side. At this time, Lily came up to quietly pour more alcohol into the glass. Narrowing his eyes, Zachary looked slyly at the man, asking if it was because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He smiled widely and replied that, being a C-rank hero, why would his master be bothered by such things? The mocking expression instantly disappeared from the guy's face, and he sked in displeasure. Zachary jumped up and, from a sudden surge of rage, slapped Lily in the face, cursing why there was such staff here at all. The girl couldn't stay on her feet and fell, hitting the sofa. Someone else's palm was imprinted on her cheek. Wade hysterically asked why he was served such disgusting alcohol. The reddened young face grimaced. How dare they force him to drink such swill? The next moment, the guy, hanging over the dancer, poured the contents of the bottle on her head. Adam, seeing this, tried to jump up, but George began to hold him back. Because his friend did not have the strength to compete with these people, the young master was the second son of a mechanical hero from the Burkshire Company, and his bodyguard was a C-rank hero Flaming Fist. Sinclair angrily threw away his friend's hand and muttered that he was aware of everything and was now just going to the restroom. Unhappy Lily was quietly sobbing, unable to get up. Sticky alcohol was running down her hair, and her face was still burning from a recent blow. Zachary sat down again, holding the girls close to him. His gaze fell on the table where there were several new bottles. And they know how to apologize. No, he added to the manager that the guilty girl must be finished off to the end, and the bar manager, knowing who this boy was, unquestioningly fulfilled any requests, loudly encouraging the man. Those present watched as he forcibly poured strong alcohol into Lily. Punishment overtook the scoundrel instantly. The hero in the rooster mask kicked him away from the girl. Romero was on all fours, coughing up bitter liquid and gasping for air. Adam approached the young master and his henchman, saying that he knew about the presence of the mechanical hero's son here. Zachary continued to carelessly pour alcohol into himself, mockingly muttering that the stranger was definitely on his turn to die today. His bodyguards covered him. The red-haired Flaming Fist came forward, interested in the guy. The rooster sat down on the sofa, crossed his legs, then crossed his arms over his chest. He offered a deal to brother Zachary. He, having heard the stranger's words, became interested, blinking drowsily. The bodyguard worriedly told the young master that it was already quite late, and he needed to leave. For this, the man received a glass bottle on the head. Zachary, without hesitation, threw mud at him, shouting that he would not go anywhere, because he was offered a deal. He swallowed the humiliating insult, gritting his teeth. Responding to the petty scoundrel means losing your job. Wade stood up and walked unsteadily towards Sinclair, asking what the deal was. The Flaming Fist nevertheless touched the gentleman on the shoulder, inviting him to sit down and rest. Throwing a threatening glance towards Adam, he assured that he would talk to this actor himself. While stirring the whiskey in the glass in a circular motion, the guy chuckled through the mask. Do they really want to attack him when he himself is against violence? However, for the fact that the bodyguard prevented him from talking about important matters with his master, punishment follows. And the rooster was ready to teach the fist a lesson. He slowly rose from his seat. The man, showing off, urged him to come closer. The bodyguard tightened the bandages on his hands, saying that it was still unknown who would teach whom a lesson. At that time, bright flashes of flame were gathering around him. A moment later, the fire smoothly flowed into his fists, and the hero pathetically said that the stranger was very unlucky, otherwise he would not have provoked him. Adam immediately realized that the bodyguard's ability was C-rank fire element attacks. The patrons of the bar, mingling with the staff, watched the unfolding scene from afar. The majority supported the rooster, saying that he was very brave for daring to challenge the student of an A-rank hero. Lily was taken under her wing by a colleague, offering help. She, still trembling, thanked. While the crowd was arguing about what the men were fighting about and whether the rooster could defeat the flame boxer, the latter wasted no time in running at his opponent, waving his flaming fists. But seeing that he didn't even move, apprehension flashed through the man's head. Why doesn't the guy try to evade? Is this really a trap? Adam skillfully shrugged off the attack as the fire passed right next to his face and mockingly asked if there would be anything else. The bodyguard bared his teeth. Since the day he became a hero, not a single enemy or beast could withstand his attack. The next second, he raised his fist, and the flames spread much further than last time, completely covering the rooster. The crowd recoiled in horror. The hero would definitely burn someone. Sinclair, meanwhile, was completely drowned in fire. Only his outline was visible. But the next moment a gloved hand appeared from the flames. Following her, the owner himself came out. The fire, like a pet, obediently spread to the sides. Flame Fist covered his face with his hand as his own power nearly burned him. He stared at his enemy in bewilderment. He was safe and sound. Adam reached out and activated his mental attack ability. The bodyguard's eyes turned white. His mouth opened in a silent scream, and he himself turned white. Taking advantage of the fact that the hero was in a trance, The rooster swung his hand and hit him just below the back of the head with the edge of his palm. The boxer immediately fell to the floor, passed out. Instantly sobered up, Zachary jumped up from his seat. What a strong man! The fiery boxer was struck down with just one blow. Sinclair sat down on one knee, extracting an ability from his fallen opponent. Ability C rank, Flame Strike, can create flames on the hands, perfect for a cook. The rooster stood up and slowly walked towards Wade. He, frightened, crawled onto the sofa with his feet, shaking his head in search of protection. Smiling ingratiatingly, he decided to talk to the stranger, asked what kind of deal he wanted to talk about, and that he would pay him right now if he needed money. Adam silently grabbed him by the neck and lifted him off the ground. Zachary, squirming with all his might, began to threaten his father. When the rooster said that he knew who his father was, the boy, trying to take someone else's hand from his throat, threatened that if he was killed, there would be no mercy from his father. The guy abruptly lowered the young gentleman to the ground and approached his ear, whispering that he was not going to kill, but wanted to share something. Looking into Zachary's eyes, the mask insinuatingly asked if he wanted to have the ability. Zachary froze, not believing his ears. Really? The rooster let go of his hand, and it became easier to breathe. Unable to stay on his feet, the guy fell and began to rub his bruised neck. That bastard thinks that he is a god and can just give him this ability. Adam threw a piece of paper on the ground, and leaving said that if the young master wants to receive the ability, let him come alone to this address in 7 days. Sinclair, having changed his clothes with the help of his ability, went outside. He immediately received a call from George, who was in the club, and shouted into the phone where he had gone. The guy replied that the bar was too noisy and he had to go outside to catch his breath. Ripley's delighted cry was heard from the receiver. Adam missed the incredible show. His friend promised to show everything that happened, and also invited the brunette to eat kebab. Sinclair's gaze settled on one of the city's high-rises, casting a bright light on the empty streets. The guy thought that the first part of the plan had been completed. Now it remains to wait for Zachary to fall for the hook. It is also worth starting to check the heroes from the inside in the Burkshire company, so he will be able to find out the truth faster. Meanwhile, in the Burkshire heroes' office, there was an argument between part of the team. 3 heroes, led by a leader, sat at a large table in the shape of the letter P. All 4 of them stared intently at the large screen in front of them. In it, a man in a rooster mask skillfully dealt with the C-rank hero, Flaming Fist. The mechanical hero sitting at the head, a gray-haired man in a red and gold suit, with atypical heterochromia, folded his hands in front of him and asked the others to voice their thoughts about what happened. Hero Glacier Adventurer, a young guy with blue hair and a suit of the same color, spoke first, saying that the masked man used his hand like a knife to deal with Flame Boxer in 1 second. Most likely he is higher than B rank. The hero Lazy Swordsman, a man with a high ponytail and a long scar running through his left eye, objected to the adventurer. What killed Michael Burse was not a hand. Michael lost the moment the masked man made a movement with his hand. The third hero, of unusual appearance, Ethan Barton, with black eyes, his head crowned with blue horns, offered to look at the assessment of the Flaming Boxer's injuries from the identification department. He was the first to see what was written. His pitch-black eyes widened in disbelief. The rest of the heroes were stunned at once. Looking at the papers, Flame Boxer's ability was gone. Looks like they are facing a huge problem. The mechanical hero exhaled heavily, staring intently at the screen. The lazy swordsman asked a question to which no one knew the answer for sure. Where did this guy come from who can erase other people's abilities? Ethan replied that in his experience, only a C-rank hero had such an ability. The mechanical hero looked around the company and asked Barton if he was confident in his judgment. The Glacier Adventurer even jumped up from his seat and exclaimed that this was impossible. The old transporter, who already had 1 foot in the grave, could not appear right now. Ethan had to admit that the Burkshire company could not deal with this issue on their own. They would have to inform the Hero Association about it. The lazy swordsman objected. A person with special abilities like him, no matter what company he finds himself in, will be used as a killing machine, so no one will report him. The mechanical hero tiredly massaged his temple and suggested not to be the first to report this. Let it be a secret of their company, then asked everyone to disperse to think. The next morning, in a huge mansion, the estate of Zachary Wade, the young master lay in bed, clutching the leaf thrown by the masked man, wondering if he could gain at least 1 ability. Having read the address again, he muttered in despair that the guy had offered a deal, which meant he needed something. Zachary squeezed the piece of paper forcefully and grinned. In any case, a couple more days and he will have the ability, the rest doesn't matter. Adam called George to the Louisville Museum, and to his friend's surprised question what they were doing here, Sinclair replied that he wanted to learn more about monsters so that it would be easier for him to escape when they met, and he himself wondered whether it was possible to extract the ability of a C-rank monster. Ripley nudged his friend with his elbow, pointing at the girls passing by. His friend probably came here not to learn about monsters, but to meet girls. Everyone knows that only beauties come here. But Adam ignored his friend's attack and pointed his finger to the side. He came here for this. The electric Tyrannosaurus, a C-rank monster, 7 meters tall, 12 meters long, appeared at an early stage, spewing electricity and causing many disasters, causing the entire city to be paralyzed. Because of him, 6 A-rank heroes, 13 B-rank heroes and 27 C-rank heroes died. Staring at the monster of incredible size, Adam said that he plans to write an article about the monster invasion. The mechanical mouth of the Tyrannosaurus remained open, in the same form as at the moment, when people finally managed to defeat it at the cost of incredible efforts and many victims. George opened his mouth in shock. This monster is so powerful. Sinclair came closer and, as if under hypnosis, extended his hand. If he can extract this terrible ability, then... A local security guard immediately ran up to him, waving a bat threateningly. The guy handed over his work badge, saying that he was a journalist and wanted to write an article about monsters. The guard examined the card and warned that in the museum you can look with your eyes, but not touch with your hands. At this moment, George winked at his friend. The frisky guy decided to talk to the man, leading him further into the hall. Asking where he could find pretty girls here, the guard immediately inquired about his sanity. Finally, Adam was able to return to his plans, and again reached out with his hand towards the monster, activating the extraction of abilities. Familiar impulses passed through the body, but the brunette noticed with surprise that the ability was difficult to extract. Finally, he succeeded, and a soft purple pearl was already levitating in his palm. But something out of the ordinary happened. He has learned the E-rank ability electricity, can create an electric ball, can also be used to charge the phone. Staring at the pearl in his hands, Sinclair asked himself in bewilderment, he only extracted an E-rank ability from an S-rank monster. Has such a powerful monster really lost its ability due to its long-ago demise? Perhaps the last time Adam was able to extract a higher-level ability from a monster because it was still alive. The guy, passing by the exhibits, thought disappointedly that it seemed that he would not get anything like that from the museum, but still, he needed to continue the search. When he returned to his room, the sun had already set and the sky turned pastel colors. The brunette laid out the loot on the table after going around the entire museum. Adam received only 3 low-rank abilities. 3 pearls, 2 red, 1 purple, flickered and sparkled, each emitting its own ability. The first is the F-rank ability clone, which can be used to create a clone that exists for a minute, and can also be used to turn on the light. The second is the E-rank ability electricity, can create an electric ball, can also be used to charge the phone. The third F-rank ability human control, can make any person show interest in you, but you are not going to use the ability to commit unethical acts, right? The guy, resting his chin on his hand, thought upset that the power of these abilities was so weak that it scared him away. But if abilities can be combined, can they also be destroyed? Adam raised the golden pearl, a C-rank fire ability, to eye level, thinking about how it could be used in his intended task. He exclaimed out loud, "Destroy." The pearl caught fire in his hand, trembling slightly, but nothing happened. The brunette decided not to give up and try again. This time something happened. The pearl began to crack. The ability was destroyed. Now on the table in front of Sinclair lay several dark, barely shining cubes of different sizes. Level 1, Dark Magic, Base Substance, Perfect and Unbreakable Square. The brunette brought one of them closer to his eyes. Could it be that abilities are created from these cubes, and he can actually destroy the ability? He began to think, the ability could be broken down into its most basic components, cubes of dark energy. In one hand he held a cube, in the other a red pearl. Then, accordingly, and for sure, he will be able to use these cubes of dark energy to enhance his abilities. Driven by his own thoughts, Sinclair connected the 2 items. The ability actually improved. The E-rank ability is human control, provides the opportunity to mentally get closer to the target, the ability to deceive people. Now you can start engaging in scams. The brunette did not believe his own happiness. If the ability really improved, he can create an S-rank ability himself. His thoughts were interrupted by screams coming from the corridor. His neighbor Lily Romero was screaming, asking someone to leave and not touch her. At first, Adam thought that Zachary Wade had come to the girl to plant the night before. But oddly enough, her parents turned out to be unexpected guests. Her mother stood aside. Her father swore with all his might, sitting on the sofa and smoking a pipe, while his daughter sobbed inconsolably next to her. He took a drag and blew out thick smoke, saying that he was not deliberately trying to deceive his daughter. Sinclair left just at that moment, quietly closing the door behind him. The man shouted again. If they had not done this, the girl would not have sent the money. The mother spoke up. Lily's brother needs money to buy a house and a car, and also to get a wife. All this costs $1 million. Where can parents get it from? The girl immediately stopped sobbing and clenched her fist. Had her parents really deceived her by saying that her father was sick and she urgently needed to send money? A new stream of tears flowed from her eyes. The girl asked if they knew how desperate she was when she learned about her father's illness. Covering her face with her hand, Lily whispered bitterly that she worked 4 shifts from morning to night, just to earn money as quickly as possible. The father exhaled smoke and said indifferently that the family's first thought was for the daughter to send as much as she could, and he would have a way to find the rest later, because the Lily family's bloodline could not end with them. The girl defiantly asked if this was just a way to bring her home and sell her to a man she didn't even know. The mother took her inconsolable daughter by the hand, saying that even if this man does not receive a higher education, he is still honest and kind. He will not treat her badly. Lily pulled her hand away with force, screaming. Did her parents even think for a second about where the $50,000 she sent a week ago came from? Swallowing angry tears, she admitted that she worked as a bartender and servant, and became an escort for this. The shocked parents looked at their daughter silently, as if they were struck by lightning. The father jumped up from the sofa, pointing his finger at Lily. What a shame, she ruined the family's reputation. He swung at his daughter, throwing mud at her and threatening to beat her. But she turned her head away, defiantly answering that the clients beat her harder than her own father ever did. At that second, Adam jumped up and managed to grab the man's palm, saying that he could discuss everything with his own daughter. The man turned around in disbelief. How dare someone interrupt him? He spat at his feet, telling the unfamiliar guy that he had no right to interfere while he was punishing his daughter. Sinclair astutely noted that the man did not seem to regret what had happened at all. Remorse could only be seen in the mother's eyes. The guy decided to take extreme measures to help her and see if she could help Lily, and therefore activated the C-rank ability Human Control the Woman. As if someone had possessed her, swung her hand and slapped her husband in the face. He could not stand on his feet and fell to the ground. Now his wife scolded him, saying that his daughter had become an escort. Did he really have a heart of stone? She rushed to Lily with hugs. Both were crying. The woman asked for forgiveness for offending her daughter, because she was her dearest child. The man, without getting up from his knees, sighed. Then her brother will earn everything himself. Adam remembered his unfortunate sister, whose life was supported by medical devices. Everything is fine, as long as people understand it in time, who in this world would not feel sorry for their own family. The next morning, the guy went with Lily to accompany her parents to the train station. The girl waved at them through the window, urging them to be careful, and promised to come for the new year. Her mother waved back, urging her not to do anything stupid again. The brunette was holding a glass of drink in his hands. His neighbor thanked him for the company and said that he could already return. Sinclair handed the girl a glass, expressing the hope that her brother would realize everything, and it would be much more useful than any amount of money his sister would send. Lily winked playfully, asking the guy to come closer so she could tell him something. He blushed, but complied with the request. The next second, Romero planted a grateful kiss on the man's lips. Pulling away, the girl thanked her neighbor again in a whisper. Night fell on the city. Adam, dressed in a rooster costume, stopped at a tall building, a center for processing monster corpses, where there was heavy security. It was there that a huge number of monster corpses were stored. This should have made it easier for the guy to gain access to new abilities. A large truck drove past, turning toward the building, and a thought arose in Sinclair's head. It seemed that there was only a special way to get inside. Without waiting for the truck to stop, he slid his boots across the floor, arching backwards. At the bottom of the car, along the entire perimeter, there were structures attached, similar to bars, and Adam firmly clung to one of them with both hands. A heavy sigh was heard from under the mask, but the brunette realized that he was not alone in such an unusual place. There was a girl's face right in front of his face, and the stranger motioned for him to be silent. The brunette obediently did not utter a word, surprised by the company. Was this man also trying to get into the center? At the very beginning, because of the darkness, he still doubted who was in front of him, but the feeling of close contact with a woman's breast dispelled all doubts. The guy said hello, stuttering, and remarked that they were lucky. The stranger grimaced and hissed at him. What a damn coincidence. She was so unlucky that he was here. Now she would have to act according to the rules of the field and rely on her abilities. The girl's name was Regina Craig. She was a representative of the Latesville Chamber of Commerce. She introduced herself and asked Adam who he was. Regina looked into the dark glasses of the mask, saying that they would soon reach the unloading zone. But for now she could not get off the truck in this position. Suddenly, Sinclair grabbed her tightly by the waist, urging her to hold on to him, and pushed to the side, flying out from under the truck. They found themselves lying on the asphalt. The guy took the entire blow on himself, without ceasing to squeeze his new acquaintance in his hands. Realizing that she was not going to move, he carefully asked how long she would continue to hug him like this. Regina was blown away from the guy by the wind. Stepping to the side, she replied that if the situation did not require it, who would even want to hug him? Finally, they reached the monster corpse processing room. Adam walked carefully behind the girl. She noticed this and asked why the guy was acting as if he had never seen anything like this. Maybe he was completely new to this business. Sinclair bowed his head, acknowledging the girl's seniority, which made her happy, so Craig couldn't help but let him follow her. They entered a large room, in which a defeated monster lay on a large metal bench, a werewolf, with a powerful body covered with fur. Regina said that her boss wanted the white hair on the werewolf's chest and would have to carefully cut it off, which she did. Then she took out an unusually shaped bag from somewhere. The girl boastfully told Adam that this was her ability storage bag, in which you can store a lot of things. The guy thought that this was a shameful name for a cosmic ability. Regina turned and called Sinclair to follow her into the next processing room, but the brunette was already busy extracting the ability from the werewolf. He managed to obtain the ability D-rank metal transformation, which can change the appearance of any metal, the dream of any car service owner. Immediately, ear-deafening sounds were heard. Adam jumped on the spot. The girl also jumped. Had the alarm really gone off and they had been discovered? An employee in a white suit appeared at the door, swearing. He cried out, sobbing, that the monster was not dead. The couple stood frozen as they watched the action unfold before them. Huge tentacles squeezed through the door, wrapped themselves around the man, and dragged him along. He could only utter a cry for help. It seemed that the danger for Regina and Adam had passed. The guy did not move from his place, and the girl leaned on his shoulder, asking him to hold her, otherwise her legs would weaken from what she saw. But the happiness did not last long. The girl felt someone's sticky touch on her shoulder. Before she had time to let out a scream, one of the tentacles was already dragging her somewhere. The guy extended his hand, trying to reach the unfortunate woman. He immediately summoned his force fire ability. The fast tentacle dragged the girl away. Adam couldn't keep up with her, and the fireball he created, it seemed, couldn't either. Jumping over another obstacle, the guy noticed something. There are all metal posts here. Exactly. A blue pearl, the D-rank ability metal transformation, has already begun to levitate in the palm of my hand. Several metal objects transformed into tentacles and reached towards Regina. With sharp ends, they cut off the end of the tentacle that was holding the girl from the monster. She fell to the floor, hitting her whole body painfully. Sinclair ran to her, asking as he went if everything was okay. The girl sat on her knees and complained that there were hooks on the tentacles that scratched her because of this. Her t-shirt was torn, almost exposing one breast. A roar was heard. The couple turned around and saw that the monster had come to life again. An incredibly sized skull with fangs, in which many tentacles swarmed. Dozens of them held down the center's employees, who squirmed and screamed in pain and fear. Regina stared in his direction in disbelief, her mouth open. The skull turned slightly and noticed them. He immediately released several tentacles towards the guy and girl. Adam summoned metal transformation again. The skull soared up to the high ceiling, pointing its tentacles at people. The guy began to attack the alien with a huge metal shield, connecting several stands together. Raising her head, Regina watched in horror as the shield thinned under the monster's set, and screamed at her partner to come up with another way. In a panic, she covered her head with her hands, squealing hysterically that she would die and be eaten. Adam was thinking hard about what to do, because this couldn't go on for long, and he remembered that he had seen several cans of gasoline. He tried to console Regina, telling her not to be afraid, because he had an idea. The guy pushed the shield in front of him and summoned metal tentacles using his ability. The canisters of gasoline seen earlier followed them. All this soared upward, straight to the alien's skull. Adam ordered the small pearl that accompanied the tentacle canisters to explode. There was a deafening explosion. Thanks to gasoline, the fire poured out in different directions. The brunette grabbed the girl by the hand and pulled her along, calling on the others to run. They seemed to have pulled away from the raging flames, but suddenly an unknown man blocked their way, holding some kind of weapon behind his back. Looking sternly at the couple, he asked if they were the thieves who brought the monster to life to attack the center. Adam stood silently, but Regina put her hands on her hips and began to attack the man, asking who he was and why he was talking nonsense as soon as he appeared. He angrily called the girl a disrespectful child, and that in the prime of his life she still drank milk. Regina was not convinced. She became even more angry, hissing that he was acting disrespectfully, being an elderly man. But then Adam recognized the old man, and loudly exclaimed his name: Thomas Conley, the hero who defeated King Kong Berserk 10 years ago. The man chuckled. The guy was more respectful, and continued that he would deal with him when he finished with the monster. The guy was surprised what an A-rank hero was doing in the corpse processing center. Thomas reached for his weapon and used the North Star attack, Style 1, Greedy Wolf attack. A ghostly blue wolf rushed forward, cutting the tentacles lengthwise and crosswise. The pair looked on in admiration at what the hero was doing, Adam noting that, as expected from the legendary inherited power called Polar Star attack, each one of them is an advanced technique. Even those with S-rank abilities would have to take a few steps back. There was a roar from the skull monster. Conley jumped up to get closer to the alien's head. Torn pieces of tentacles scattered across the hall. The hero summoned the ability attack of the North Star, Style 2, Hunger of the Heavens. Pushing to the side, he saw how the skull had lost its tentacles, moving in anger only the severed appendages. Finally, the man released Water of Heaven, sending his katana and streams of water towards the alien. The space shook, and after a few seconds Sinclair was already watching the monster being torn to pieces. Thomas dropped to one knee. Behind him bloody scraps scattered across the hall, all that was left of the alien. The hero pointed the katana at Adam, saying that now it was time to deal with the guy. He immediately noticed intense eyes filled with determination and murderous intent. Sinclair tried to convince the older hero that they were not the ones who brought this beast to life. The man, without changing his position, replied that this was nonsense, because the couple looked too suspicious. Regina whispered to Adam with concern if he had confidence that he would defeat this old man. The guy replied that he couldn't, but did she want to? The girl shook her head and said that she wanted to lend him a weapon. She shoved armor made from the materials of a rank B monster into the guy's hands and ran away, shouting as she went that the armor would help, and she would root for him. Adam, having examined the object, chuckled. What madness! Regina reminded him of Trisha. Thomas suddenly, without warning, attacked the guy, raising his katana over him. Fortunately, Sinclair managed to react at the last moment. He put his hand forward and the armor given by Regina deflected the attack, surprising the older hero. The brunette himself was amazed at such a powerful defense. Thomas did not give up, and regularly wielded his weapon, increasingly advancing on the guy. He exhaled heavily and activated the brain reboot ability. The ability made it possible to slow down the hero's movements in the eyes of Adam. The mask stared at Conley. The guy thought that after activating brain reboot, the attack seemed slower, but it was still not enough to defeat him. Screaming furiously, the old hero began to rush towards the guy with redoubled strength. He, even in slow motion, realized that he did not have time to dodge. I had to use extreme measures, the human control ability. The old man realized that everything was not going according to plan when he could not control his movements in the air. He hissed in disbelief, asking the guy if he stopped his movements. Both opponents grouped and sank to the ground. Adam calmly said that he would have been in danger if he had not done this. Thomas, who would not have suffered defeat, once again ran away with his sword at the ready. Are these tricks really all that petty thieves are capable of? Adam used metal transformation again, and a whole staff grew from the small object in his hand. The two heroes clashed weapons overnight. Sinclair's eyes, safely hidden under his mask, studied the old man. Each of his attacks is strong. Human control can be used to stop him for a short time, and so that Adam is not cut into two parts. The employees of the center who watched the fight vied with each other to put forward theories about the origin of the man in the rooster mask. If he can fight with Thomas Conley, could he be the A-rank hero of the 6th zone god of weapons? The brunette heard and wondered who the god of weapons even was. Finally, Thomas stopped and pulled the weapon away, deep in thought. Judging by the guy's attacks, he was most likely not a thief. The man hid his katana behind his back and ordered everyone present to leave the corpse processing area because he wanted to talk to the rooster. The workers blinked in surprise and asked if they all needed to leave. The hero flashed his eyes dangerously. Someone is not going to listen to the order of the manager of this center. Regina, along with the others, ran towards the exit, shouting to Adam that she would be waiting for him outside. The men were left alone. The guy asked what the older hero wanted from him. He replied that he knew that the brunette was not the god of weapons, because the skills were incomparable with the skills of God. Only the metal ability slightly resembled him. But someone like Adam has several abilities, which means he can be considered a strong person who would never come to the center just to steal some fur. Thomas narrowed his eyes and seriously asked the brunette, did he come here in search of a world secret? Sinclair, without expressing surprise, thought, what is the world secret? What is he even talking about? We need to learn more from him. Therefore, the guy decided to cheat and said that he came here in search of a world secret. The man suddenly burst out laughing, exclaiming that it would be very good to tell such a young and ambitious, strong person like a guy. Pointing his hand to the side, the hero admitted that the real purpose of creating this center was to open a one-way tunnel to the world of monsters. This tunnel was called the White Hole. It's good that the rooster's mask skillfully hid Adam's emotions. He was shocked by what he heard. 15 years ago, the White Hole of the city of Louisville was successfully discovered. The Hero Association sent a small team of high-ranking heroes with a special mission to infiltrate the world of monsters, and Thomas himself was on that team. During this mission, many S-rank heroes died. Only he and 2 others were able to return because they risked their lives. The man said that, in fact, each monster corpse processing center is built on the weakest points of the earth. As long as they continued to burn the monsters' bodies at these weak points, they would be able to open a white hole leading to the monster world. Adam nodded at the corpse of the tentacled monster and asked what about it, why the alien came to life. Conley said that this is something that they do not tell the outside world. In fact, it is a mutation of the monster that rubbed against the white hole. People on this planet are like animals trapped by beasts. Only when they all gather the strongest qualities of humanity will they have a chance to win. The elderly hero turned around and said goodbye to Adam that he could go. Regardless of what organization he belonged to, he must remember that he was part of humanity. It turns out that the men's conversation was heard by the powers that be. A beautiful red-haired woman stood next to the chair in which the elderly man was sitting. She said displeasedly that this old man Thomas Conley continues to do stupid things. How could he even tell such things to the outside world? The man calmly replied that even if he had not told about it, sooner or later other organizations would have found out about it, and it was impossible to keep a world secret only between narrow circles. The woman asked if the headquarters video conference was here. It involves more than 25 people who have already fulfilled the necessary conditions for consideration of a Category S case. The couple turned from the window to the screens, carefully peering at the people on them. Here's what the Louisville Metro Heroes Association has to say. And looking at each other, they began the conference. The main question on the agenda: is it necessary to tell the truth to associations of owners of heroes who exceed A rank? Adam came to the hospital again to visit his sister, who was lying in a coma. He often did this. He sat next to him and talked, not knowing whether she could hear him or not. Addressing her by name, he said that today he was told one harsh truth. Earlier, Sinclair, after talking with the hero, left the corpse processing area, into another room, where he was met by a buzzing crowd, people asking each other what was happening inside. Did this guy really defeat Thomas? Why was he the only one who came out? The guy first approached Regina. The girl asked if everything was okay. He understood that he could not let other people know about his abilities. The guy replied that he was fine and asked her to come closer and look into his eyes. The girl complied with the request in bewilderment. As expected, Adam used his human control ability on her. Regina's consciousness became foggy, and her vision went double. The man in the rooster mask ordered her to forget that he was using fire and metal powers. He also gave her the armor and made her believe that it was he who brought the girl protection and owed her 10,000. Adam then snapped his fingers. Regina woke up as if waking up from a dream. She quickly said that she was glad that everything was fine with the boss, that she already had a curfew at home, so she would go first, and rushed away. Remembering these events, sitting in the hospital room, Adam smiled, looking at his sister. This Craig is so similar to her. She is sweet and loves money. Stroking Trisha's cold cheek, he said that after revenge he would find a way to wake her up. Full of determination, the guy returned home after dark. He sat down at the table, ready to experiment with his abilities, holding a piece of metal in his hand. The metal transformation ability was activated. A star absorption ring appeared on Adam's finger. He then shook the ability medicine in his hand. The brunette can't let people know his true ability, and must use these two things to trick Zachary Wade. New snake appearance. The appearance has changed with a white mask with blue stripes on it. Adam tried on the mask. The new set of clothes will be called Snake. His abilities will be different from the abilities of his second self, Casper Bart, and the guy will also be able to use fire attacks when necessary. Thanks to the fact that Casper became a part of this, an organization consisting of his many guises will appear. It will be called the Judges. Adam's main goal is to judge those heroes who have fallen, and the expenses of the organization will be decided by the young master Zachary Wade. Late at night, Sinclair arrived at the agreed meeting place with the guy. He was fast asleep right on the floor. The brunette kicked him, forcing him to wake up. At first he did not understand who was standing above him and began to threaten, but a second later he recognized the man in the mask and began to apologize. Adam thanked the young master for the visit, and noted his confidence in him. Zachary clung to the masked man's legs, screaming that boss Casper Bart could have whatever he wanted if he gave him the ability. He listed all the benefits that he could bestow on this person. Sinclair kicked the annoying minion away, answering that he was not interested. Hanging menacingly over the guy, Adam insinuatingly said that it's easy to get the ability, you just have to look into his eyes. Then he used the human control ability. Zachary's consciousness immediately split into two, plunging into an unconscious state. To begin with, Adam asked to tell him about the blue pill. There was no answer. The guy just sat in front of him, staggering slightly, and did not react at all. Sinclair cursed to himself. What's going on? Did it really not work out? He then asked Zachary to slap himself. When this request was not fulfilled, Adam began to wonder if it might be that the guy already had an ability higher than C rank, which made human control ineffective on him. The brunette used a mental attack. Wade fell to the ground with his eyes closed. Sinclair remembered that last time he didn't attack him in the bar, but it doesn't seem like he has any ability. Anyway, why not give it a try? Taking advantage of the extraction of the ability, the brunette was incredibly surprised. Zachary actually already has the ability. A bright green pearl burst out of the guy's body and flew up to his palm. A rank A ability is rebirth. Only once, after death, you can be reborn and go back a day. The ability can only be used after death, and it's very stupid. As the pearl hung in the air, casting an emerald light, Adam still couldn't believe that the young master had an A rank ability. He directed the ability towards himself, deciding that he would be kind to Zachary in this case, because this ability would allow him to turn the tide of events. And now he will invest in the Gaia Pearl that he received at the corpse processing center. Adam woke up Wade, who sat up abruptly, screaming to be given the ability, and in general, when he managed to fall asleep. The brunette replied that this happened because of fatigue, then took out a metal ring, asking to look at it. Then he explained, surprising the guy, that this stellar absorption ring made by the organization can be used to steal ability factors from others. Adam then handed him the ability medicine, telling him that the organization uses special methods and turns these ability factors into a medicine that can give ordinary people abilities. Zachary almost dropped the bottle from his hands. It's so special. Is he really being deceived? Adam replied that he could drink and find out whether it was true or not. The gears in the guy's head were spinning at double speed. At first he thought it was poison, but if Casper wanted to kill him, he wouldn't delay it until today. He doesn't care. he'll do it. Zachary made up his mind and drank the liquid in one gulp. The empty bottle fell out of my hand and broke with a clang. His eyes became bloodshot, and he growled loudly. The guy fell to his knees in front of Adam, clutching his head. The masked man laughed. Soon he will learn the power of his abilities. Wade instantly transformed. Screaming that his whole body was on fire, he became a real werewolf. This actually has nothing to do with the cure. It was Sinclair who controlled the pearl from a distance. The transformation did not stop there. Instead of human ears, animal ones appeared. Long and sharp claws grew on its paws. Now a huge and muscular wolf with burning eyes towered in front of Adam. The brunette asked what the werewolf thought about the ability to transform. He looked at the animal's palms in surprise, asking if this was an ability, and whether he became stronger or weaker than his brother, who can turn into a dragon. Sinclair replied that his brother had an A-rank ability, but Zachary only had an E-rank ability. He roared when he heard about the difference of 3 ranks. The brunette coughed and urged the werewolf not to worry, because he had just joined the organization. Later they could give him F-rank medicine. The werewolf made a funny face. Adam thought about why the guy turned into a werewolf, but he became stupid and cute, like a husky dog. The brunette also said that given the fact that the organization would have to work with a werewolf, he changed it to an E rank for Zachary. He thought, it follows that there are other abilities in the organization. Does this mean that one day he will become stronger than his father? The guy barked, hugging his savior by the torso, and begged Adam to change the ability to a rank for him. He waved it off in disgust. The werewolf continued, shedding a tear, that he would call the boss his godfather, because he had never met a person who would be so kind to him. Adam still tried to discourage the beast, answering that he did not have such an opportunity, because the organization its own rules, and a high rank can only be achieved with sufficient achievements. Zachary obediently sat on his hind legs, asking about the organization. Sinclair answered, urging him to listen carefully. The name of the organization is Judges. It was created by one powerful man. Under the boss there are 12 zodiac leaders, and Casper's nickname himself is the Rooster from the 12 zodiacs. The werewolf asked how powerful the boss is, since his godfather is only the leader. Adam replied that there is no need to try to guess. The boss is not someone who often shows his face. He is very mysterious. Zachary immediately asked how quickly he could earn his achievements. The brunette replied that this happens by completing tasks, and the first one has already appeared. Pointing his finger at the werewolf, Bert said that he would use his identity as the young master of the Burkshire company to find information about the blue pill. The werewolf asked what it was. He was told that it seemed to be a pill that could increase someone's strength. Casper himself arrived in Louisville to find out about the forces behind this thing. Zachary's eyes sparkled. It could really increase someone's power. What a wonderful thing. For this he got hit in the back of the head. Adam sternly replied that there was no need to harbor evil ideas, because there was a hero who used her and accidentally harmed an innocent person. At that moment, the werewolf returned to his human form. Scratching the back of his head, Zachary asked who exactly harmed the man. Sinclair said, the A-rank hero of his company, Glacier Adventurer. Wade screamed in shock, amazed by what he heard. Bruce Rash, always acting cool, but in reality he is just a regular drug addict. Casper said that when the young master finds useful information, they will meet here again, and then he will give Zachary a D-rank ability. He nodded his head. When leaving, Sinclair decided to teach the young master a lesson and said he forgot to warn him about something. The effect of the medicine lasts only a week. The guy has limited time, which means the task must be completed within a week. Zachary fell to his knees again, crying out desperately. In the morning, fresh and cheerful, Adam walked along the sidewalk, sipping soda from a glass. Adam walked past the booth with a notice board, drinking a soda from a straw, but turned back. Something caught his attention. On a large sheet of paper there was a caricature of himself, wearing a rooster mask. None other than Regina Craig was looking for him. The ad text read, looking for Uncle Casper Bart, dressed in a black raincoat with a white mask on his face. If you have any clues, please call Regina Craig. The soda from his mouth rapidly migrated onto the glass of the booth. The guy spat it out in surprise, and the male salesman cursed. Sinclair backed away, apologizing for a long time. Adam tore off the sheet and looked at it as he walked, thinking about how many more surprises this girl was hiding in herself. Suddenly he noticed a familiar silhouette in the distance coming around the corner. accompanied by several men in combat uniform. Recognizing the stranger as Regina Craig, Adam was surprised. Had something really happened to her? He ran closer and cautiously looked out from his hiding place. Regina found herself sandwiched in a concrete square, but still stood militantly, with her hands on her hips, asking who her pursuers were. In front of her stood a girl in a bright uniform and two men who looked like ninjas. A tall stranger with a piercing in his nose bared his teeth and demanded that the girl listen to them and give the young master's blade back. Craig exclaimed that she had no idea what they were talking about and that she didn't have any blade. The girl was again attacked from all sides, shouting that she should stop the performance, because, taking advantage of the naivety of the young master, she exchanged the blade for fake jewelry, so she better give up the weapon if she wants to live. Adam immediately knew that it was a legendary S-rank weapon called Iringa, but he didn't know if Regina actually had it now. The girl fell silent and thought for a moment. This means that this blade is actually something good. Regina immediately used her ability. A storage bag appeared in her hands, in which you can store many things. Trying to distract her pursuers, she whistled something under her breath, answering in a sing-song voice that she had never heard of anything like that. They were clearly mistaken. Adam narrowed his eyes and grimaced. What a poor argument. Anyone can draw the right conclusion as soon as they hear her, that this greedy girl received the blade, but does not want to give it back. A dark-haired girl in uniform abruptly interrupted Regina, saying that there was no need for idle chatter. We needed to start taking action. The tall man rushed forward without another word, using military-style, triple knives. His companion, putting his hands together in a special gesture, shouted, shadow-style, doppelganger. Sinclair was amazed that these two were inherited type abilities, and she was both above C rank. Regina took out a battle fan from her large magic bag and struck a pose. She is not one of those who is easily intimidated. The weapon in her hands is the B-rank Belsung. Swinging sharply, she lowered the fan down. Everything around shook from the suddenly appeared flame. The girl called on the attackers to get away. The men were literally blown away by a deafening stream of wind mixed with fire. Regina waved her fan, which raised currents of air and carried her upward. She triumphantly exclaimed that there was no such rule that could force her to return things after receiving them. A dark-haired girl watched her carefully. She frowned and clenched her fists. Blue, icy flames formed at her fingertips. Ability of rank A Snow Woman. The girl seemed to have doubled in size. Her appearance had changed dramatically. Now she was an adult woman with blue hair, elven ears, dressed in everything blue and scorchingly icy. The space around her became the same. Regina recoiled in shock. Why did it snow suddenly? Adam turned his head slightly, frowning. The next moment, he used his ability to change his clothes to a uniform with a rooster mask. Meanwhile, Regina was already flying to the side, fleeing the Snow Woman's ice attack. She, darting her gaze at her rival, caused a snow typhoon. Craig felt an unusual flow of air behind her. It was the blue-haired stranger who was directing the icy wind at her with her hands. Adam muffledly shouted his friend's name through the mask. Meanwhile, a crowd had already gathered on the street, and even a local TV channel with a frisky presenter arrived to gain views on the live broadcast. Even a snowstorm did not become an obstacle. Nicholas Rowtherf, holding the microphone up to some kid from the crowd, looked into the camera and pointed to the fight, walking on the Belt Parkway, and called out to the heroes for help. Regina, caught in the icy whirlwind, screamed shrilly. She fell to the ground with a thud as the wind threw her down. The Snow Woman immediately loomed over her, asking if the thief would return the thing that did not originally belong to her. Standing up, Craig quickly took two blades out of her bag, smiling cheerfully at her rival and laughingly asking the sweet lady which blade she had lost, silver or gold. The eyes with red irises narrowed warily. Ignoring the threat, the woman instantly turned Regina's legs into two pieces of ice. The earrings on her ears jingled as the Snow Woman shook her head. She warned Regina to be more talkative, otherwise her frozen legs would turn into small pieces. Now Regina had a katana in her hands. The girl pulled it out of its sheath, declaring that she would never fall for other people's tricks, because she received it thanks to her skills, and never threw it away. Regina looked behind the Snow Woman and threw the dagger behind her, exclaiming that she was now giving the blade completely free to Caspar Bart. He, standing nearby, immediately caught what was thrown, praising the girl for her agility. But holding it out in front of him, he cursed. Who would need such a worn-out blade? even if they offered money for it. The girl smiled awkwardly. She could not even think that they would pursue her because of this blade. The Snow Woman shouted to her companions that they needed to grab the stranger, since she and the thief turned out to be allies. On Adam right, their ninja clones attacked from all sides. One of them was rushing towards a guy with a hero shuriken in his hand. Sinclair felt an unusual sensation running through his entire body. Was this blade really absorbing his mental power? Suddenly he was pulled to the side. Is his body really moving on its own? Suddenly the hand with the dagger itself described a circle in the air. The next moment, the ninja's face took on a childishly surprised expression, and the lower part of his body was missing. Adam swore dirtily, shocked by what had happened. As he stood there in wonder, the man with the piercing ran at him from behind, his dagger hand outstretched, shouting "Die!" Sinclair reacted quickly, jumping up and dodging the attack. The hand with the dagger began to move, and a purple haze wafted from the weapon. The guy soared up. His opponents remained far below. The Snow Woman followed him and quietly pronounced the name of the blade, syllable by syllable. Everything happened at lightning speed. The man who attacked him, as if crucified in the air, stood on weak legs and asked the teacher to save him. The purple haze cleared. Adam was below, walking away with the pearl of someone else's ability in his hands. C-rank ability. 3 blade styles of the sun and moon. 3 blade styles can activate the power of the blade to fight off enemies. But C-rank, it's like holding a blade in your mouth, not that cool looking. Adam shook, bowing his head. Too much of his mental strength was absorbed. The guy thought that he couldn't stand it anymore. There was a loud scream. Sinclair felt the cold touch of the Snow Woman's icy blades on his back. He thought dejectedly that it looked like he would have to use his revival ability today. A green streak flashed through the air. The crowd raised their heads, vying with each other to ask what was happening. The ice blades immediately split into many pieces. Adam immediately recognized the light of despair. Regina was very surprised. Was it really a lazy swordsman? Not far from them, leaning against the wall, stood a swordsman, rolling a match in his teeth. Ethan Wade headed towards the warring parties, saying that the heroes can forgive arbitrariness in the 6th region, but to sow rebellion in the 1st region is the height of insolence. The Snow Woman rudely told him that her people had only come here to reclaim their property, while the heroes were abusing their powers with might and main. Regina appeared next to her, who protested, pointing her finger at the woman. This is all her master, who gave away the blade, and now it has become entirely hers. Reaching out her hand to Regina, she thought that she needed to ensure her own safety first, since 2 A-rank heroes had arrived and the chances of victory were diminishing. A lot of sharp ice flows flew towards Craig. The Snow Woman turned to the hero, warning that she would spare Regina's life and leave Louisville, on the condition that they return what was originally theirs, even if the heroes killed her people. Black eyes sparkled. Ethan mockingly said that no one said that the girl could leave the city, and did not the woman consider the first area to be a place where you can come and leave at will? The Snow Woman remained silent in response. Then Barton turned to the lazy swordsman, leaving the girl for him, and he himself volunteered to test the abilities of Caspar Bart. The swordsman, rolling the match to his right cheek, asked him not to overdo it, because the company intends to get him for themselves. This seemed to anger the hero, as he suddenly rushed at Adam, shouting in irritation that he was not only here to help his brother resolve issues between them. Fortunately, the guy was ready. With the last of his strength, he nevertheless put his sword forward, ready to defend himself. The dragon's fist flew straight towards the unfortunate dagger. Unexpectedly for everyone, the hero was thrown back several meters, raising a cloud of dust. Regina leaned forward in fear, screaming Caspar's name, but Ethan wasn't particularly impressed. The Snow Woman at that moment threatened the heroes with death. Ice needles flew towards the dragon. Regina, who was standing by, tried to dodge the attack. The lazy swordsman rushed to the boys' defense, using the strong wind with his blade, causing them to glow with despair. With every second, the glow, like a sharp saw, was getting closer to the dumbfounded Snow Woman. It had almost reached her face. The next moment, the sound of breaking glass was heard. The woman, without even having time to make a sound, disintegrated into many small pieces of ice. The lazy swordsman muttered in complete silence without emotion that he missed her. Regina exclaimed that this was not true, because the Snow Woman had just crashed. The man rolled his eyes. It was just an illusion. She had escaped, but she should still be somewhere nearby. Adam, taking advantage of the commotion, crawled around the corner. He heard Regina catch herself, not finding him. The guy was breathing heavily, complaining about the damn blade, which did not leave a single drop of strength in his body. Bringing the blade closer to the glasses on the mask, he thought, if the weapon is from a monster, he will be able to extract the ability from it. The space turned dark, and vague ripples appeared around the blade. Finally, 2,500 units of dark energy were obtained from the blade in the form of already familiar cubes. A few seconds later, there were a dozen cubes on the floor around the guy, although he couldn't extract the ability pearl. But he received a bunch of dark energy cubes, and the material from which the blade was made must be from an S-rank monster. The guy wondered what ability he needed to improve in order to be able to go against the dragon. A blue, very bright pearl levitated in front of Adam, which he guided with a leather-gloved palm. D-rank ability metal transformation. Having decided to try it, Sinclair brought the pearl closer to the cubes, which were immediately absorbed into the ball. What happened next came as a complete surprise to him. The pearl changed its color to a beautiful green and increased in size. Now it was an A-rank ability metal control. You can control all metals within a radius of 1,000 meters. The maximum weight of the controlled metal is 1,000 tons. The snow woman sharply turned her head towards Adam, feeling a strong surge of energy. The guy raised his head, looking around. Now he could feel every object made of concrete and metal, cars, planes, buildings. He clenched his fist in anticipation. Sinclair finally had the opportunity to fight someone normally. At that moment, a snow whirlwind was sneakily approaching him from behind, like a huge ice drill. But now it became difficult for Adam to be taken by surprise. He raised his hand, and a stream of fire spread from his body, melting the ice. The ice weapon was instantly melted by the impact. Fiery propeller. Adam was invincible. The snow woman was knocked off her feet by a huge flow of alien energy. She gasped and cursed, trying to maintain her balance. Sinclair turned, and the fiery blades obeyed his every movement. The snow woman, blushing, was indignant. How is this even possible? With one movement of his hand, the guy transformed the fire into long ropes. Those, clashing along the way, tightly grabbed the snow woman. She twitched, demanding to let her go, but the guy asked not to move, noting that he tries to be gentle when it comes to girls. He brought his palm directly to her ample breasts. The girl squealed in indignation, asking what he wanted to do. A large green pearl immediately reached out to Adam's palm, casting light around. A rank A ability. Snow woman calls upon the snow woman to help in battles, and a person can also choose to merge with the god entering his body. Adam thought it was just an elemental ability, but didn't realize it was a summoning type. Literally every man's dream. He held back with one hand the true owner of the summoning ability that had fallen on him, which had completely weakened after being extracted. At this time, he was discovered by the lazy swordsman and the dragon. Ethan asked the swordsman if this was the same passerby whom the hero knocked down. His aura had changed. Adam carefully sat the unconscious girl against the wall, telling the men that he had already dealt with the snow woman. Ethan immediately lost his temper, shouting that such trash could not defeat her. The guy came closer and offered to fight him to be sure, and asked who would attack first. And he suggested that maybe both heroes would attack first. They were silent, looking around at the insolent man. On the skyscrapers of the city, Nicholas Roserf broadcast from large screens to the entire space, carefully following the course of events with an omnipresent microphone. Had he really heard right? And this guy wants to oppose too, despite the fact that both are heroes of a rank. Immediately, various comments began to pour into the live chat. Someone wrote that the evil dragon was able to kill a guy in a black robe with just one finger. Others said that they had become fans of the mysterious stranger, and that he was very intimidating. The presenter rushed towards the impromptu battlefield, without letting go of the microphone, which means there will be an exciting scene of a battle of 1 against 2. Dragon Name looked at the rooster carefully, and seriously said that he would not team up with the lazy swordsman to win, even for the sake of the spectators, because this would cause the A-rank heroes to lose their dignity. Adam retorted that he was very sorry, because the battle could have been exciting. The dragon turned his gaze to his partner, noting that in order to defeat the enemy, one must first understand him. The swordsman sharply replied that he himself knew. He also said that the ring on the rooster's hand is strange. Perhaps the secret to the loss of abilities is hidden here. You need to be careful. The man, thrusting his blade forward and causing a small dust storm, went at Sinclair, asking the dragon not to worry, because he just wanted to see the guy defeat the Snow Woman. The lazy swordsman warned the rooster that if he wins, the dragon will be next on the list of attackers. Adam did not answer anything to this, and only beckoned him with his finger. The lazy swordsman took a running start and took off, ready to attack. The blue flame shot up and then changed its trajectory downwards, heading straight towards Adam. He, without thinking for a long time, repelled the blow with a wall half his height made of flame. Suddenly the guy, with one hand, using only his abilities, swung at the hero. He opened his mouth in shock, not understanding what he was trying to do with his bare hands. A stream of fire flowed from Sinclair's hand, which, with a deafening ringing sound, as if taking on physical embodiment, collided with the swordsman's blade. The man watched as the flames turned into tentacles and wrapped around the blade of his weapon. The swordsman didn't believe it at first, but then he realized that the guy was trying to control his own dagger on his own. But unfortunately, Sinclair did not succeed. He was almost wounded by his own force when the fire rebounded. He jumped back sharply, landing on one knee. Having erected a wall of fire between himself and the lazy swordsman, Adam thought that his dagger was made of monster materials, and it was not metal, and besides, there were no metal objects on the hero's body. At this rate, one could lose. A and E rank abilities were levitating on both palms. Snow Woman and Human Control. The guy urgently needed to improve one ability to a rank in order to defeat the lazy swordsman and the dragon. He clutched the green ability pearl in his hands. To improve, a purple pearl came up. Human Control, which at rank A turned into puppet control. Now it could carry out illusory interference in targets of rank A, brainwash targets lower than rank B and receive their power for 10 years. You can enter puppet body for 2 hours every day. Throwing the ability in the palm of his hand, Adam promised himself that he would use it only for good. The lazy swordsman, fenced off from him by a wall of fire, got tired of waiting, and loudly asked what the rooster was doing. A gap appeared in the wall, and a mechanical mask peeked out, asking for patience. Adam took the opportunity while the swordsman was looking at him and used the puppet ability. The man's eyes doubled. He could barely stand on his feet. Suddenly he saw in front of him, as if in reality, his beautiful sister, who called him by name and asked why he was pointing his dagger at his sister. Robert Roseby couldn't believe his eyes why his sister appeared in front of him. The girl slowly extended her hand to his face. But the warrior, at the cost of incredible efforts of his willpower, pushed away the outstretched hand. The illusion dissipated, and the piece of mirror stretching from Adam's hand flew back. The swordsman, covered in sweat, hissed that the guy really had a double ability. Sinclair did not miss the opportunity to tease the man, and while he rushed at him with a sword, the guy jumped back and told the hero as he walked that he did not expect such weakness from the lazy swordsman, who owned the intent of the storm sword. The man exclaimed indignantly that the guy knew nothing. Finally, the hero sank heavily to the ground, leaning with one hand on the blade, as if on a stick. That girl was his late sister. He could not do this. The crowd roared and split into two camps again, with some calling for the swordsman to get up and keep fighting. Others booed him and admired the black-robed stranger. Nicholas Rowtherf asked the audience, could the man in black use a mental attack, judging by the stunned look of the swordsman. Regina stood next to him, who was also closely watching the battle. The leader again suggested that the hero would soon lose, since his hands were shaking, and he could be ready to withstand the metal ability, but could not cope with the mental attack. Craig waved her hand victoriously, praising Brother Casper. She believed that the swordsman would kill him, but who would then return her 10,000? Adam heard echoes of conversations and thought deeply. The dragon, his dark eyes sparkling with anticipation, leaned forward with interest, praising the lazy swordsman for doing a good job in getting the stranger to use his last card. The man warned him to look the rooster in the eyes, because in this case you could meet the person you care about most, and this would become a weakness in front of the enemy. Meanwhile, Ethan, surrounded by a purple haze, slowly approached Adam. He was clearly already tired of the dragon. The hero's red pupils, like a small flame, flared up even more. He gathered himself up, became even larger in size. The space around him turned dark purple. He believed that this battle was of great importance, and he and the rooster needed to make a deal. Adam bowed his head interestedly and asked what the hero would bet on. The dragon pointed a finger with a long claw at Sinclair's hand. If he loses, he will tell the secret of his silver ring. Adam raised his hand and played with his fingers, inviting the dragon to come and take it. He thought that the hero was not stupid at all, because everything he did here was done to attract attention to the star absorption ring. At this moment, Ethan Wade jumped straight at the robed man. He was amazed at the lightning-fast reaction and speed, which was faster than that of the lazy swordsman. But Adam was not a failure. He quickly erected a stone between them, on which the dragon hit with a roar. Sinclair stepped aside and the dragon rushed past. Ethan lunged forward and, screaming, hit Adam in the back with his elbow. The blow threw him far to the side. The mood around changed. The announcer excitedly exclaimed that the metal controlled by the man in black could not keep up with the speed of the dragon. Adam landed on the ground with a crash, causing a cloud of dust to form. The dragon grinned contentedly. A double ability does not guarantee a win. Sinclair struggled to his feet and was now holding his stomach. Even his mask was damaged. Now it had many cracks. The guy coughed. He received severe damage. The hero has high speed, strong attack, and the dragon scales on his body have a high level of protection, and he can also spit fire. Ethan was still smiling as he complimented Adam's strong bones. Sinclair wasted no time in using his puppet control ability. The hero, who was not expecting this, gasped in surprise. His yellow pupils, like those of a cat, dilated in horror. His beloved little brother, Zachary Wade, tearfully held his throat and begged his older brother to save him. Ethan grabbed his head, trying to drive away the obsession. How dare the rooster turn into his adored brother? Disgusting. Suddenly, the hero's body began to change. He became the earth dragon of black flame, and was now crawling towards Adam. It looked really creepy. The guy was scared. The illusion was destroyed. Did this really only anger the dragon? Nicholas Roserf shouted into the microphone that today the audience witnessed the second phase of the transformation of the evil dragon, and he simply admires the man in the mask. It was he who provoked the hero to take this step. Ethan, with a furious cry of "Die!" rushed at the calmly standing Adam. A moment later, the guy used his metal ability, and a lot of thorny thorns came out of the ground in front of him. The dragon only laughed at this, rushing into the attack with redoubled force. Adam laughed through his mask. The dragon has become a drill. Well, let him try to catch up with him. Now Sinclair, on a huge metal plate, flew up sharply, as if on a magic carpet, leaving the dragon below. He flew up to the guy and again began to mock his strength. Adam did not react at all, but only commanded the plate to fly forward. Immediately the arrogant Ethan found himself caught in the grip of metal bonds. Vertical pupils looked at Adam. The hero asked if he had forgotten about his black flame. A violet flame formed in the hero's place. He tried to get rid of the metal that bound him. The presenter, wiping away sweat with a handkerchief, continued to comment on what was happening. The black flame of the evil dragon had already melted metal before, and probably this time the enemy would not last long. Regina, who was standing nearby, immediately pushed him in the side with her fist, shouting that Brother Caspar Bart is strong. His tactics and strategies are outstanding. He will not do useless things. Ethan really couldn't handle the metal shackles, either throw them off nor melt them. Adam thought to himself that this was a B-rank fireproof shield. It wouldn't melt if it was only burned once. Then Sinclair lifted a nearby yellow car into the air. Next, the red car was used, as well as other metal objects lying nearby. Ethan looked up, not believing his eyes. A truly enormous metal compressed cube hung in the air, an incredible metal control ability. Adam, standing at the top, directed his hand down, putting all his strength into this movement. Fall, Titan's fist. The cube began to fall to the ground. People, seeing the rapidly approaching shadow, ran away screaming. The corners of the dragon's lips turned up. He asked himself if this was really how he would die. There was a deafening roar, and the street was covered with a dust cloud. Time passed and the cloud settled. People were still clearing their throats. The omnipresent presenter suggested seeing if the evil dragon had survived. The crowd approached the metal cube, vying with each other to make guesses about the state of the dragon. Someone noticed a cute flame butterfly nearby. She, whining, was looking for her brother the evil dragon with all her might. The elder mechanical hero arrived after her and ordered her to retreat as she took to the skies to search for her. A man stood on the roof of a high-rise building. He used his ability and sent beams coming straight from his eyes to the cube. That one, under the influence of forces, began to gradually collapse. People cheered when they saw the rank a mechanical hero. Finally, the metal cube split into two parts, and everyone saw the dragon lying unconscious, and the lazy swordsman sitting in front of him in the pose of a samurai. He lowered his head and muffledly said that he was still alive thanks to the wall of sighs and sincerely regretted that he had caused the company to lose face. The mechanical hero came closer, answering that everything was fine as long as the man was alive. The flame butterfly, which flew up to them, cautiously asked if they needed help. The swordsman admitted that she would have to take care of the dragon herself. Some time later, in the common living room of the apartment of Adam and his neighbors, he sprayed himself with a special cooling spray. Lifting up his shirt, he generously sprayed fresh bruises and wounds, and it was damn painful. The evil dragon knows no mercy. The meeting with the snow woman and the evil dragon was quite expected, but his main goal was to focus on the blue pill. There are currently 2 leads. The first is glacier adventurer Bruce Rashed, and he will hand this case over to Zachary Wade. The second is a B-rank hero, the hero of hot and sour noodles, who is going to hold a fan meeting in the near future. You need to go and take a look at him. Looking at the large number of cans of spray on the table, the guy thought that in the future he might attract more danger if he continued to share the apartment with other people. He needed to prevent them from getting involved. His thoughts were interrupted by Lily Romero, who silently entered the living room and even scared the guy. She, noticing Adam on the sofa, asked what he was doing here, and why he smelled so strongly of medicine. The guy forced a smile, answering that he hit the corner of the table. The girl looked at him incredulously, raising one eyebrow. Sinclair, unable to find room for embarrassment, mumbled that Lily had arrived just in time. He had an announcement. Mary and Karen, who had also just returned, gasped along with Lily when their neighbor told them he was planning to move out of the apartment. He leaned his elbows on his knees, seriously said that it was not very convenient for him to live with only girls. Now, having received a promotion at work and a large salary, Adam decided to move out. Karen pointed at Lily. What about her? Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, Adam gave a strangled laugh. He had nothing in common with Lily Romero. Karen and Mary replied that in this case they would not stop him, and asked him to contact them when Sinclair was free. Lily silently went to her room. Still embarrassed, Adam was glad that this conversation was over. He offered to treat the girls to a farewell dinner. At that moment, the door to Lily's room closed with such a noise that everyone present in the living room jumped. The guy was sweating all over with excitement. Had he really said something wrong? He decided to break the sudden silence, saying that it was better to go to dinner with the whole company. Karen couldn't stand it first. She rudely pointed her finger at Adam and exclaimed that Lily is so beautiful and kind. Why on earth doesn't she deserve to be with him? Why does Sinclair treat her like that? And in general, he's a real freak. Adam squeezed into the sofa and was silent. The girl chuckled, saying that they would have lunch together only after he sorted out his relationship with Lily Romero. The guy sighed heavily. He would be lying to himself if he said that he didn't love Lily, but he also had no right to put her in danger. However, he found the courage to come to the girl and knock on the door. He was immediately invited to enter. Lily was lying on the bed, legs dangling. Adam could not see her face. Sinclair immediately asked for forgiveness, but the girl interrupted him irritably, because he himself said that he had nothing in common with Romero. Adam replied that he did not mean that. Lily's emotions were seething over the edge. Blushing, she turned to the guy, asking if the reason for his refusal was her past. He flushed and recoiled, assuring that that was not the point. Then Lily asked again why he didn't like it. Adam took the crying girl by the shoulders. They could always remain friends. But Lily did not give up and continued to ask why her neighbor didn't like her. Adam understood perfectly well that Lily's attitude towards him was due to a lack of security. She simply compensated with his help for the lack of love from her parents. And now, when he did not reciprocate, everything turned into hysterics, because the girl was sure that it was all about her past, and this made people look down on her. She is like a porcelain doll that can break even at the touch of someone who cares for her, and if Adam suddenly hurts her. Sinclair wanted to explain himself, but Lily suddenly turned away, saying that perhaps what the guy was saying was correct. Taking Adam's hand in hers, the girl said that she was in a hurry, deciding that kissing marked the beginning of a relationship. Looking at the guy through tears, Lily asked him to become her first official boyfriend, even if their time had not yet come, and it hurt her that they could become strangers to each other. Sinclair exhaled and promised her this. Evening came and the richly furnished mansion was noisy. The glacier adventurer, Bruce Rashed, was lying on the sofa, drinking strong alcohol from a glass with might and main, egged on by the company. Zachary Wade watched the hero from behind the open door. If not for the task of his godfather, he would not have spent money on alcohol and entertainment for Rashed. Carefully creeping into the room where the hero was already snoring, the young gentleman began searching his pockets. My hand came across a box that felt unusual to the touch, but the glacier adventurer stood up abruptly, asking what Zachary was doing. He jumped up and immediately put the box back. A drop of sweat ran down his forehead as the guy found a way out. He turned around with a cigarette in his hands, saying that he had lost his lighter. Bruce, flushed from alcohol, looked around and asked where the girls had gone. Wade grinned predatorily, asked which one he liked. He would ask her to take a bath with his brother Rashed. He laughed and asked for the one wearing overalls. Later, Zachary, carefully listening to the girlish giggles outside the door, began rummaging through the things of the glacier adventurer. He was looking for that very box among personal belongings and women's underwear. Finally, luck smiled on him. The young master exclaimed triumphantly upon opening his prey. The box contained a lot of substance pressed into cubes. Zachary took one and brought it closer to his face, not understanding what was in front of him. Looking straight ahead, the guy realized that he really wanted to eat one cube. But reason prevailed over desires. He told himself a firm no. A small piece broke off from the square. Is there really a blue pill in this thing? Clutching the cube in his hands, Zachary looked blankly in front of him. Suddenly a loud, drawn-out female moan was heard from the direction of the room. The young gentleman jumped up and flew out like a bullet into the corridor. Bruce was already raging there. He made up his mind and took one cube out of the box. Then he hid it in his jeans pocket. Zachary returned and knocked carefully, calling his friend's name. The door swung open, and a puzzled glacier adventurer stood in the threshold, all flushed and sweating. The young master, knowing in advance what awaited him, looked behind the hero's back. The girl was lying on the bed unconscious. He stammered and asked what was wrong with her. Bruce indifferently said that the girl was dead and went to collect his scattered things. Fearing that he would notice that he was missing, Zachary tried to talk to the hero, saying that everything was in order, let him leave, and he himself would ask his people to deal with the girl. Wade saw Bruce off and waved at him at the exit, telling him to take care of himself. The young gentleman himself fell exhausted onto the sofa. He was scared to death that he would be caught at the crime scene. The glacier adventurer headed to his car in the underground parking lot. Suddenly he was overcome by incredible rage. The hero grabbed the box with those same cubes. Throwing the box onto the dashboard of the car, Bruce cursed dirty as the pills spilled out. Veins appeared on his face. He became so irritated. Ever since he started taking the pills, he could no longer control his strength. His hands were shaking so much and sweat was pouring down his face that the guy ordered himself to calm down. Bruce accidentally glanced at the box and quickly collected the scattered cubes back. Suddenly he realized that one tablet was missing. However, it doesn't matter, there are only a few days left until the next game. With thoughts that it doesn't matter whether he loses one pill or gets it, the hero left. Adam was driven by George Ripley in his car to his new home, wondering along the way how it was possible to move out of his previous apartment, doubting his friend's adequacy. He, turning to the window, replied that these were stupid illusions, because living with a bunch of girls was completely inconvenient. The blonde smiled insidiously. This inconvenience was all the charm. Sinclair grimaced. Old George was becoming a real pervert. His friend just chuckled at this. Finally, the guys drove up to an elite house in an expensive area. Ripley marveled at how his friend got the money to rent such a good apartment. Adam replied that his adopted son gave him a gift. Taking the box of things in his hands, Adam smiled, listening to George exclaim in disbelief how he managed to adopt a child, probably won the lottery, and definitely got to treat his best friend. Actually, muttered Adam, it was true, but Ripley didn't believe it. When the move was completed, Adam happily stretched out in his new huge bed. He had eaten his fill, and was now left alone, although now he felt a little lonely. Sitting up in bed, he realized that after the fight with the evil dragon, he had not yet used the call of the Snow Woman. Although Adam spent some of the dark energy to improve the puppet control ability, the remaining energy is still an ability. It's time to see what this girl is all about. Throwing an orange pearl on his hand, he sent it in front of him. A portal formed in the air. Then Sinclair summoned the Snow Woman. But he did not at all expect what happened. At first his gaze lingered on the tiny elven ear. Adam jumped out of his seat, not believing his eyes. In front of him stood a tiny girl in a robe based on Japanese traditional clothing, shod in touching tabi and shoes with straps. She looked with huge eyes, connecting 2 index fingers. The large window was covered with a crust of frost. Adam was shaking from the cold. Snowflake apparently could not control her abilities. She put one knee on Sinclair's bed, worriedly asking if he was okay. The guy waved his hand in fear and asked not to come closer. She, like a puppy, looked into the owner's eyes and asked him not to worry, because Snowflake would not harm him. But the temperature might be a little low. He, wiping his nose, was surprised by the new nickname, and suddenly remembered something. Raising his hand, he used the flaming fist ability. A small dancing light appeared on his palm. The girl screamed joyfully and asked permission to come closer. Adam could not even think that Snowflake was not afraid of fire, and she answered, stretching out her hands to the fire, that she loved warmth. The light flew up to her lap. The girl giggled, bringing her palms closer. Snowflake was glad that she had such a wonderful owner. Adam thought that it was fortunate that the cold air generated by Snowflake was only a passive effect. Otherwise this C-rank ability would not be able to withstand the cold air. Narrowing her eyes, Snowflake peered carefully at Sinclair. The owner was also warm. She clung to Adam's leg, who recoiled, scolding her. But the girl had no intention of leaving. She only pressed herself closer to his knee. Adam decided that since Snowflake was so cute, he would not drive her away, and pulled the blanket towards him. Now they both sat under the blanket, sneezing. Adam firmly decided that he had allowed himself weakness only today. This would not happen again. The next day the whole city was buzzing with anticipation. Finally, there will be a fan meeting for the hero of hot and sour noodles. People vying with each other shouted the name of their pet, and confessed their love to him. Adam, like a real agent, stood in the crowd wearing a themed crown and sign. Today he disguised himself as an ardent fan to get closer to the hero. There were so many fans that he was soon almost run over, stepping on his feet and even clinging to his hair to get closer to the stage. A large woman appeared on stage and solemnly addressed the audience, announcing that the superhero hot and sour noodles was ready. Everyone present shouted that they were ready to see him. The presenter slyly asked the crowd to chant louder. They obediently complied with the request, again shouting the name of the superhero, and how much they loved him. Fireworks exploded, and the long-awaited star appeared on the stage. The hero dropped to one knee, and exclaimed that the audience was now safe, because all dangers would be crushed with his iron fist. He stood up and raised his hand, and the crowd cheered. Adam looked with disgust at the random people who prevented him from approaching the stage. Finding himself almost at the edge, Sinclair almost fell. The superhero hot and sour noodles noticed this in time. The man extended his hand to catch the unlucky fan. The next moment, Adam found himself in the arms of a superhero, like a girl in the arms of a knight. The hot and sour noodle superhero literally beamed as he loomed over him, and asked him to be more careful next time. Sinclair, smiling from ear to ear, thanked him warmly, apologizing for his clumsiness. When Adam took a vertical position, the men introduced themselves and shook hands. The fans present did not hide their envy after all. It was incredible luck to be next to the legend. When shaking hands, Sinclair managed not to give himself away, and transferred some ability to the hero of sour and spicy noodles. The pearl rested in his palms for a split second, then disappeared. The guy's glasses sparkled in the spotlight as he squeezed someone else's hand and admitted that he was a fan. Finally, the fan meeting ended. People gradually dispersed. The hero of hot and sour noodles, dressed in a shirt and jeans, hid his hands in his pockets, and his manager, the host of the meeting, breathed a sigh of relief, praising her boss for a good job. As they headed towards the star's car, the man remarked that it was a difficult job, and he also had to shake hands with so many people. He needed to sanitize his hands soon. Sitting down in a soft chair in the salon, he sent his assistant to lunch, and he decided to take a nap in the car, since another show awaited him. The woman worriedly asked whether he could withstand such a load. The superhero irritably slammed the door in the manager's face, finally saying that he had to keep up with everything, and also asked the manager to clear his schedule for the next weekend to celebrate his daughter's birthday. The man sat back in his chair, thinking out loud that he needed to earn even more money to contribute to the huge debt he had accumulated. Perhaps he should go back to gambling. He scratched the back of his head and forbade himself to do it. Suddenly, a strange voice was heard from the back seat. he asked the superhero if it was not tiring to live like this. The man sat for several seconds frozen, like a statue. Turning around sharply, the superhero of hot and sour noodles, sweating profusely, began to babble, asking if it was Caspar Bard who fought the evil dragon, and how he got here. The black-robed man thought that he could now know about the hero's location due to the ability pearl in his body. Adam asked the man not to worry, but only to answer a few questions. He thought that since Caspar single-handedly defeated the dragon and the lazy swordsman, he had no choice but to obey. The superhero warned the man in the robe that even if he and the other heroes are in the same company, they may have different positions, to which Caspar replied that he understood everything and asked to look him in the eye. Sinclair did not hesitate and used puppet control. The superhero's eyes widened as he felt his mind being invaded. The guy found himself in some dark space with a scattering of stars. Was this really the inner world of the superhero hot and sour noodles? Several screens with the memories of the owner of the space were displayed above Adam's head. Sinclair realized that this was the superhero's past, but the memories of the blue pill were nowhere to be seen. But suddenly one of the screens showed a strange man holding a pill in his hand. He was dressed in a formal suit, wearing a bowler hat on his head, but the face itself was blurry, looking like outer space stirred by someone's big spoon. The mask looked sharply in that direction. Who is this man? Meanwhile, he handed the superhero a pill, saying that as soon as he ate it, his abilities would increase. The man would be able to reach the top of his career, pay off his debts and finally return to his family. But when the superhero of hot and sour noodles wanted to snatch the pill from his hands, the stranger sharply raised his hand up. The pill can only be exchanged for information. The superhero's face was covered with sweat. He asked what kind of information. The space on the man's face moved, mixed. He wanted to know the secrets of some heroes. His interlocutor did not hesitate, and immediately began to tell. The dog hero is secretly playing with. The crazy hero acts as secretly holding children captive. Adam, without blinking, watched this performance. Stretching out his hand to the screen, he wondered, is this information scandalous? And is it possible to get a pill just for knowledge? Or are some other transactions needed? He flipped through the screens like the pages of a book, looking for additional information. Did the men meet more than once? Yes, there was a second, third, fourth meeting. Finally, at the next meeting, the stranger became interested in Caspar Barth, the new owner of abilities. The hot and sour noodle superhero, who was willing to do anything for a pill, nodded in agreement, shouting that that man not only bullied the chairman's son, but also defeated the evil dragon and the lazy swordsman. The man adjusted the bowler hat, and asked if there was information related to the ability. He needed to know everything. Later they met in an underground parking lot. The worried man remembered everything he knew. Caspar can erase the abilities of others, but he has never shown his face in public, so it is unknown what he looks like. The stranger scratched his chin with interest after hearing such information. He threw a transparent bag with a dozen pills into the superhero's palm. As if drugged, the man was hunched over the pills, nodding as if in a state of rage as the wandering stranger ordered him to gather more information about Caspar for his daughter's birthday next week. Adam stepped aside, folding his arms over his chest. It seems that the reason for the appearance of the blue pill is to capture the weaknesses of many ability holders, then corrupt and control them. He looked into the distance, wondering what the purpose of these people was, since they secretly controlled so many heroes. The superhero hot and sour noodles woke up, shouting that a real hero knows how to forgive. Then he noticed that he was alone in the car and began to look around in surprise. In the evening, Zachary Wade obediently waited for his godfather, wondering why he did not come, because he himself had already been bitten by mosquitoes. Right behind him, he heard an authoritative voice asking what the guy was talking about. He shuddered in fear at the unexpected appearance. Zachary happily ran to the man in the robe. He had finally arrived after so many hours of waiting. With an insidious look, he held out a box containing a protective capsule and the pill itself. Zachary made a great effort and received the pill from Bruce Rashed. Adam brought the pill to his eyes. The color and quality were the same as the one that the superhero hot and sour noodle had. Zachary mentioned that it was because of this thing that Bruce killed a man. Was it really a side effect? Sinclair responded that in pursuit of power and glory, these depraved heroes are capable of anything. They will not be afraid of side effects. Wade then exclaimed that his godfather was right. These people do not deserve their title. Adam looked at the guy seriously and asked what, in his opinion, a real hero should be like. The young master wondered, does this question carry the burden of the organization's expectations regarding him? Beating himself on the chest, he exclaimed that he thought the more powerful a man was, the greater the responsibility he bore. Heroes must make the salvation of humanity their life's duty, and must not betray their faith for the sake of power and glory. Sinclair grimaced. Well, what movie did this guy copy the line from? He tossed a vial of red liquid to the young master and praised him, saying that including the organization funds deposited earlier, it was enough to exchange them for a D-rank ability potion. Zachary caught the potion and sked in displeasure, just AD. Adam calmly replied that the guy should improve his skills slowly, not strive for instant success, and if the potion is not needed, then he can return it. Zachary shook his head, thanked him, praised the color of the potion, and then drank the contents of the flask in one gulp. Sinclair thought that he should combine 2 E-rank pearls first, and then patted Wade on the shoulder when he noticed that the potion tasted like ketchup. Well, that was just his imagination. Moving behind Zachary, Adam did what he had planned, the D-rank ability werewolf power. Now he does not depend on moonlight and can freely turn into a werewolf. Zachary felt his face, asking out loud why he had not transformed. Sinclair mockingly thought that for this he needed, first of all, to activate the pearl of the ability. The mask raised his fist in the air, his expression impossible to read behind the dark glass. Perhaps Zachary needed to warm up a little to understand how it worked. The guy turned around and, stuttering, asked what the Godfather wanted to do. The next second he received a blow directly to his right eye. Adam calmly said that one must endure in order to be stronger. The Godfather must be ruthless. The unfortunate young gentleman, with a full black eye, whined that he was in pain. For a few more minutes, in the silence of the forest, cries of pain and requests not to be hit in the face were heard. The fluffy tail wagged. The young werewolf muttered in admiration that his ability had improved. He felt a huge surge of strength. Adam asked his godson to cancel the ability when the wolf, holding a t-shirt in his hands, turned to him. The mask clarified that maintaining such a form is quite tiring. The transformation happened. Zachary joyfully exclaimed that he managed to transform back. Sinclair noted this and ordered to continue to monitor the blue pill. Because people who use it are emotionally unstable, you need to be careful. The guy got dressed and thanked his godfather for his care. Casper then gave instructions to gather information about disreputable heroes, but not in order to make them followers. As Wade suggested, after all, not everyone can join the judges, especially heroes who were simply pawns. The young master fearfully asked if the organization was planning to absorb their power, to which Adam, calling for an iron plate to fly away on it, replied that this is how the potion of abilities is taken, and wished his godson to work harder to collect the necessary materials for his C ability. Zachary almost burst into tears. It turned out that after half a day of work he had only been promoted to C rank. He, looking at the silhouette of the Godfather, stood for a long time, making a visor with his palm. He will fulfill this mission. Adam went to a place where there was no one, on the sea coast. The metal plate slid gently through the air, almost touching the surface of the water. Landing on the sand, Sinclair took off his mask. An empty beach in the middle of the night is the most suitable place to train the abilities of the Snow Girl. He extended his hand, and a bright yellow portal appeared over the sea. This is how the guy called upon Snowflake. The girl appeared and immediately rushed to her owner. She missed him very much. Adam barely managed to dodge the cold embrace. He stopped the baby, shaking his index finger, and said that now is the time to develop her abilities. We need to conduct a training battle. Snowflake babbled that she didn't want to harm her owner, but Adam only grinned. A summoned spirit of C rank would not be able to harm him. The girl, standing on a stone in the water, caused a large wave, exclaiming that she was starting to attack. Sinclair looked at her from under his brows and smiled. It was time to attack. The girl focused on her feelings to cause a snowstorm. Suddenly, some unusual crevice of black light appeared in the sky above her head. Adam gasped in shock when he saw this. From there stretched out a limb that looked like a frog's leg, only much larger. Then an ugly head with sharp teeth and bulging eyes appeared, and a strong body. It was a ranky pumped frog monster, a humanoid beast that loves to exercise its muscles, has a pair of strong arms. Excited, Adam frowned. There was a monster invasion, but it's good that it's only D rank. But after the frog, a huge predatory unicorn appeared in the crevice, an aquatic animal, He was extremely good at running on water. Adam, realizing that he did not have time to help, warned the girl at the top of his voice. Both monsters immediately rushed towards Snowflake, sneakily attacking her from behind. She looked at them, as if spellbound, for several seconds. Then she sharply pushed away from the stone on which she stood and flew away to the side, leaving the enemy with nothing. Adam cursed as he flew up on the metal plate. Suddenly, right in front of him, out of nowhere, a bright light appeared. The guy covered his face with his hands. It was so dazzling. The edge of the ice parted, and the same snow woman that Adam saw for the first time while fighting with the heroes appeared in the sky. She frowned and hovered over the monsters. Were they really looking for their death? Thick snow was now falling from the night sky. The pumped-up frog, baring its teeth, put one paw on the sandy shore. She, watching the girl, croaked and giggled disgustingly. The snowy woman cursed when she looked at the newcomer. Adam was surprised that she returned to her old image. Snowflake replied that this was her combat form. Now her body was no longer that of a child. The clothes changed to more revealing ones. Sinclair blushed, as always fierce and tough. The snow woman threw several snow lightning bolts at the frog, thus trapping him in an ice trap. The monster, just like Adam, was fascinated by the beauty of the warrior, and is now frozen in ice, looking at her with loving eyes. Adam put on the mask and asked if the alien was dead, but the girl replied that she was not yet. At that moment, the pumped-up frog broke through the ice with strong arms and jumped high with a croak, trying to reach the people. Sinclair used the plasma ability. The monster kept dodging the attacking substance. He jumped from side to side, expertly avoiding attacks. Finally, Adam ordered the snow woman to finish off the alien, who obediently aimed ice arrows at the monster. A few seconds later, the pumped frog lay on the rocks, croaking furiously, its limbs firmly nailed by ice arrows. Adam chuckled. The easiest part remained. He released streams of plasma at the frog. The attack became fatal. There was an explosion, and life began to drain from the alien at that very second. The metal plate fell down. Adam approached the defeated monster. He sat down and did what he had to do. He extracted the D-rank ability physical training. Physical endurance and other indicators will be constantly strengthened through physical exercise. It is noteworthy that by becoming stronger, trying to remove the limiter, a person will not last long. The snow woman carefully called her owner, who was intensely peering into the distance. It seemed they had lost someone. Standing on the sand, surrounded by a snowstorm, they did not know where the unicorn had gone. Snowflake turned towards the city and expressed the assumption that the monster was heading there. Adam nodded, about to pursue the alien, but suddenly noticed that something was wrong with Snowflake. The girl grabbed her face, and a child's voice was heard, accusing her of trying to regain control of her body. Sinclair ran up worriedly and asked what was wrong with her, but Snowflake, flushed, shouted that her name was Jasmine Miller, and she was not really Snow Woman. Suddenly she grabbed Adam by the collar with both hands, and shouted that even if she didn't think that the second person would succeed, she should be the first to. The girl closed her eyes tightly and reached out with her lips to the amazed Sinclair. Before she could kiss her owner, she turned back into her previous version and hovered awkwardly in the air. Adam immediately caught her so that the girl would not fall. Setting Snowflake down, he knelt down in front of her, asking who she really was. The girl stood silently, trying to understand what happened. She looked up at Adam in surprise, asking what happened to her. The guy stroked her on the back of her head, surprised that she didn't remember anything. Snowflake's huge eyes looked with incomprehension. She only remembered the beginning of the training. This means that the girl has two personalities, and they are not connected by memories. Snowflake joyfully raised her hands. The owner patted her on the head, and now let him hug little Mia. Adam smiled awkwardly. Did they both really like him? Suddenly Mia sank to the ground, muttering that she needed to sleep. Sinclair suggested that she return and rest. The girl yawned and stretched, saying that she would be bored, while she was carried away by the golden glow. Adam was left alone again. He turned towards the city spread out in the distance. The monster was indeed heading there. Meanwhile, Zachary Wade was driving home along the road near the embankment in his luxurious open-top car. He was a wolf, a predator rushing across the field. Out of his peripheral vision, he noticed a strange splash in the water. Turning his head, the guy peered into the darkness. He noticed with horror a huge unicorn with glowing eyes, who was running straight through the seething waves. Zachary immediately turned sharply in the opposite direction. On the beach, very close to the water, A late company of 4 people was having fun, 2 guys and 2 girls. They did not notice at all what was happening in the water. Wade ran out of the car and from afar shouted at them to stop eating, because the monster was approaching them. The sitting guy turned around. The girl next to him said in surprise that someone was waving to the company. The blonde frowned. Just because that stranger has a sports car, that doesn't mean he needs to show off right away. The blue-haired girl listened and realized that the stranger was warning them of danger and asking them to leave. The company turned around at once when they realized that this was not ordinary boasting. They screamed in horror. The unicorn was already very close to the shore. The monster was still grabbed by the hooves of the sea waves, but he was rapidly approaching his prey. Zachary grabbed his head. What to do? How to save them? He, not expecting this from himself, rushed forward. How could this be? He had never been so responsive before. The young people fled in all directions. The blue-haired girl found herself in the water, and now she was stretching out her hands, begging for help, apparently from the blonde. Suddenly someone's strong hand grabbed her wrist. The girl was surprised when help arrived. It was Puckliash from her company. The guy took a log with him and ordered his friend to hold on to it. Since the wood was large, the girl shouted for Puffy to hold on too. The guy hesitated, holding out his hand. He was so glad that Annabelle was okay. At that second, a huge unicorn jumped out of the water, completely grabbing the guy's hand. Blood sprayed out. The girl screamed in horror. Tears flowed from her eyes. She began to call her friend. The waves swallowed the guy's heartbreaking cry. Meanwhile, Zachary swam up to the crying girl, shouting for her to swim to him faster, and they would get to the shore together. Annabelle, sobbing, asked him to first save Puffy, because he was dragged into the sea. Welch returned. It would be better to first save the girl so that the monster does not hurt her too. Annabelle threw herself on his neck. She was madly afraid of the monster. Welch ran out of the water, clutching the girl in his arms. He was amazed at how heavy she was, even though she looked very thin. Zachary heard the sound of helicopter blades behind him. Indeed, a helicopter flew to them, apparently from some TV channel, from where the report was being conducted. On board, a pretty blonde girl said that the station had received many reports about a monster and huge waves on the coast of Louisville, and offered to check the condition of the victims. Those on board noticed a couple who miraculously escaped death and escaped danger. Zachary lowered the girl to the ground and suddenly heard not very flattering information about himself. Internet celebrity young Mr. Welch is ready to die for the sake of flirting with a girl. Meanwhile, at the Burkshire company office, Ethan Wade was working out his abs in the gym, chatting with the lazy swordsman at the same time. Now he was saying that the hero David Evans went with his father to a meeting of the Hero Association. The swordsman was working out on a treadmill and laughed at his friend. Was he really jealous? And someone could take his place. Breathing heavily, the dragon stood up, answering that he was not jealous at all. He did not have to adapt to the bureaucracy, and this was better for his strength. Suddenly, the lazy swordsman shouted and drew his attention to a TV nearby. It showed a monster on the shore and Ethan's younger brother. Wade was skeptical about the plot. The hero must have made a mistake, because Zachary would definitely run away if he saw the monster. Meanwhile, the guy ran away with Annabelle in his arms. The unicorn followed them. The woman on the plane was scared. She hoped that the heroes would arrive on time, otherwise the monster would catch the people. The dragon realized that this was not someone's stupid joke, and grabbed the TV with his hands, shouting that for some reason this idiot Zachary was pretending to be a good guy. Why doesn't she leave the girl and run away? The unicorn was getting closer and closer to its victims. Zachary continued to run as fast as he could. He dared to look behind him for a second to see where the alien was. The lazy swordsman shook his head. The young master is finished. The dragon clenched his teeth. Tears flowed from his eyes, and he angrily whispered the name of his beloved younger brother. Suddenly, the lazy swordsman, pointing his finger at the TV, shouted in shock that the brother of the demon dragon could also transform. Zachary had truly turned into a werewolf, and now Annabelle looked like a doll in his hands. The dragon stared blankly at the screen. His brother has the power of transformation. Finally, the werewolf landed at a safe distance. He carefully laid Annabelle on the sand, and she looked at him with loving eyes and called him her hero. Zachary playfully flexed his muscles. You don't need to be obsessed with him. He's just a legend. Turning, Wade rushed straight at the unicorn, shouting that a real man does not run from danger. He will kill this monster. Adam, levitating on a metal plate, looked at Puckliash lying on the sand. He saved him in time. otherwise there would have been a tragedy. Now it was time to watch his godson fight. The guy raised his hand, and with him, sharp, dagger-like pieces of stones flew into the air. Seeing the werewolf, the unicorn turned sharply back. Zachary ran after him into the water, shouting and hooting with joy. The werewolf sped up to catch up with the alien. His burning eyes narrowed and he grabbed the monster's hoof. Then he swung and hit him on the surface of the water, raising huge splashes. He lifted it up again and spun the horse in the air, as if he were playing a carousel. And at the end, with a swing, he released the alien somewhere far to the side. He fell into the water with a crash. Zachary stood tall in the water and reasoned that when the monsters invaded, he was no longer a person who would run or hide when the rescuers came. Raising his hands in the air, he shouted that he must surpass his elder brother and become an S-rank hero. Adam watched him from the rock. Excellent work, and he changed his mind about the young master. A group of young people finally got together. They excitedly began asking questions about each other. Then the long-haired girl asked Annabelle where Puckleash had gone. She sobbed, answering that the monster dragged him into the sea when a friend tried to save her. The others stared at the girl in shock. Annabelle pointed at Zachary standing in the water, saying through her tears that this hero would help save Waddles. Suddenly the guy realized that something was holding him tightly in the water. He could not move, and a tsunami formed in the waves, which immediately swirled him around in a whirlwind. A unicorn appeared from behind him, rushing towards him, bending his head with a sharp horn. The next moment, the beast pierced the unfortunate werewolf right through the back. Shaking his head, the unicorn threw the guy aside. The city also seemed to be under attack. Explosions were heard everywhere. The werewolf, bleeding, landed on the shore. A helicopter was flying above them. The girl dispatcher loudly commented on what was happening. Zachary Wade was wounded in the back and received great damage from a double blow with a hoof. The dragon immediately put on his jetpack. The lazy swordsman wished him luck, and expressed his concern, also asking him to take care of the others. A few seconds later, Ethan was already flying to help his brother. However, Zachary found the strength to get up. Even though he was in pain, the unicorn rushed at him with redoubled strength. Zachary raised his head in shock. Really again. A huge tsunami formed in the sea, which was approaching the werewolf. The girl in the helicopter was tirelessly monitoring the situation. The monster had gone berserk, and that was bad. Zachary was trapped in water and couldn't get out. He couldn't breathe because of his wound. The guy raised his head and noticed a familiar silhouette on a high rock. He shook his hands and with all his might called his godfather for help. Gradually weakening, he whispered pleas for help with his lips alone. The crowd, watching the battle, were talking worriedly. It seems that the monster is absorbing young Master Zachary. Will he really die? Annabelle sobbed, pressing her hands to her chest, and begged the hero to hold on. Adam was flying on a metal plate and attracted a lot of attention. People watched him, realizing that reinforcements had arrived. Everyone loudly began chanting the name of Bishop Caspar Barth. The guy flew over the helicopter. The girl saw him and said that the mysterious Caspar Barth, who had already appeared on television some time ago, had appeared again. Adam looked at Zachary and silently thanked him for revealing his abilities while playing bait. He raised his hand up, holding the pill in his hands. It remains to be seen whether the pill will absorb the energy. Someone from the crowd noticed that the metal pillars were bending due to the abilities of the man in the robe. Sinclair immediately caused a rain of sharp pieces of metal. The unicorn noticed him and turned to the unexpected enemy. Adam looked him up and down, suggesting he try something. The guy immediately pointed metal needles at the monster. They dug into the horse's body, causing the animal to neigh painfully. The monster's tsunami stopped, and Zachary began to fall into the water. The girl in the helicopter screamed in shock that the mysterious Caspar Barth knocked out the alien with just one ability. Adam flew towards Wade to catch him at the plate. The unfortunate guy immediately turned into a man. Adam landed on the water and swam up to the wounded unicorn, intending to take away his ability. The guy bent down and ran his hand through the monster's fur. Now he had a D-rank ability Surf Master, which allows him to walk on water and control its flow in order to attack. Sinclair turned to the unconscious Zachary. He helped attract the attention of the blue pill, and now he will receive all the well-deserved laurels. Adam began to slowly sink onto the sand near the shore. A few minutes later, Zachary and Puffy were lying on the sand under the gaze of the crowd, with Annabelle on duty next to them. The guy's wounds were treated in time. Their lives were not in danger. Welch was the first to take off, screaming about how much pain he was in. A blue-haired girl threw herself on his neck with a hug, thanking him for saving Puckleash and her own life. The guy blushed deeply, saying that this was nonsense, and also asked cutie Annabelle not to hug him so tightly because of the wound. People from the crowd ran up to them, asking what changes had happened to Zachary, because they talked about him as a worthless son from a rich family, to which the young master replied that he was a hero of justice who protects humanity. Zachary watched his godfather fly away and thought about how grateful he was and would do everything he could to serve him. Some guy from the crowd called Caspar Barth a real god who appears at the right moment, deals with the monster, and also abruptly disappears without praise. Suddenly someone touched his shoulder. The guy screamed. Zachary turned towards the noise. The grumpy oddball came out to him. The man turned to Welch, because he had violated the rule of using abilities, so he needed to go to the Hero Association. Those present began to whisper, speculating who this man was, probably from the Hero Association, as indicated by the sign on his clothes. The people from the association always interfere in everything, are too pushy and always follow the rules, and this man is called Grumpy Scissorhands because he does terrible things with special respect. Zachary timidly muttered that he was just saving people. Grumpy put his hand forward, saying that the associations don't care about the reasons. If a guy doesn't have permission to use his abilities in public places, then he's breaking the law. But suddenly an authoritative voice was heard, which said that this issue would be resolved by the Burkshire Company, and he wanted to look at who dared to send his brother for interrogation. The crowd parted for the militant Ethan Wade, who had already donned his heroic uniform. Zachary was surprised to see his brother there. He, looking at Zachary with black eyes, praised the werewolf's regeneration potential, because the wounds had almost healed, and asked the guy not to create problems next time. He turned away and agreed irritably. Grumpy decided to leave, but finally said that the Burkshire Company would be able to give the Hero Association a comprehensive explanation that they would accept. The dragon watched his brother, who was laughing surrounded by people, and thought about where his abilities came from and why they suddenly awakened. When everything calmed down, the wounded were taken away, and the crowd dispersed. Adam returned to his home in the morning. He had just taken a hot shower and was drying his head, sitting with only a towel on his hips. Sinclair looked at the water element ability he had gained. He thought that he had many elemental abilities. Flame, plasma, metalkinesis, surf master. If he can combine them, it will be quite interesting. The guy sat with his hands behind his head, dreaming that he could someday cure Trisha, because having tried many abilities, he feels their power, and will try to find a healing one. All that remains is to find information about a person with such an ability. Now he can only try to penetrate the body of the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles to look for some useful information. He activated the control ability. The superhero of Hot and Sour Noodles walked carefree down the street, humming something to himself. Suddenly he threw his head back. The pupils of his eyes turned white. He exhaled heavily. Now Adam took over his mind for a while. Sinclair examined his or her own hands. The ability of control allows you to successfully capture bodies. The guy tried to test his abilities, but activating metalokinesis led to nothing. He thought with disappointment that the ability remained in his body and did not move with his soul. Suddenly he heard a girl's cry. A stranger was turning to someone, demanding that he follow her, but not use force. Adam ran up and hid behind a tree to see and hear better. The green-haired guy grabbed the beautiful dark-haired girl's hand, shouting that if she didn't want to join the Divine Dragon Company and undergo training, she had to follow the company's rules. His glasses fogged up and his cheeks turned red as the guy talked about the attractive body and face of his interlocutor. The girl grimaced at this, trying to escape. The stranger lifted the hem of her skirt and offered to please him and the boss, the Reverend Lord of the organization, because he has excellent healing abilities and experience in such things. Adam was amazed at what he heard. This was what he was looking for. Meanwhile, the guy grabbed the girl by the t-shirt, practically tearing it. She screamed, demanding to be left alone. Her pursuer flew up from a powerful kick in the ass. The brunette couldn't help but be shocked and fell to the ground. The green-haired guy was buried in a bush under a pile of leaves. His head appeared from above, and an angry scream filled the street. Adam loomed over him in the body of the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles. Playing with his fists, he introduced himself to the green-haired man as his karma, which would now bring down retribution. The guy pointed his finger at the hero, furiously asking why he was interfering in his own business. He hugged the crying girl by the shoulders and asked how he would feel if his younger sister or daughter were dirty harassed and blackmailed. The guy grinned. The girl had been quietly doing an internship at the company for many years, and was clearly not suffering, but with all her heart wanted to get this chance. The girl sobbed and screamed that she would never have thought about this, and that she would stop talking nonsense. Adam asked her to think about it. If something starts once, it will not end later. If she wants to become a heroine, let her focus on her goal and dedication. The brunette looked into his eyes devotedly and thanked the superhero hot and sour noodles for saving him. Then she turned and spat at her pursuer. The girl left, and the guy and Adam were left alone on the street. The guy clenched his fists and remembered that in order for a superhero to transform, he needs to eat something sour and spicy. The effect lasts no more than 15 minutes. But where does he find such food? He shook his fist, shouting that this idiot had let her escape and destroyed everything he had worked for. The consequences would be incredible. The superhero folded his arms across his chest and asked about the consequences. The guy rushed at the man, putting his fist forward, threatening to make him disabled. He stood there without moving. Adam popped an orange pill into his mouth, and he immediately found himself in the form of the superhero hot and sour noodles. A hot spicy transformation took place. The guy opened his mouth, not believing what he saw. The man did not waste time and aimed his fist straight at the impudent man's chest. The guy, like a ball, flew off into the bushes again. The hot and sour noodle superhero heard sounds from that corner and turned around. The guy shouted muffledly that the eaten capsule prolongs the transformation by only 15 minutes, and when the time is up, he will beat the hero until he asks for mercy. Adam asked the time again in disappointment. He thought about the fact that the ability cannot move with the body, but it increases internal strength, and since it is connected to the soul, it means that after collecting so many abilities, his own strength has become incredibly frightening. Due to the fact that the power of the ability directly depends on internal strength, the superhero hot and sour noodles can last no more than 15 minutes. He cannot control the energy, and spends it all until he reaches exhaustion, and therefore Adam's transformation may last longer. Adam, in the body of a superhero, laughed with anticipation. Using his ability, he saw exactly where his opponent was hiding. The guy ran in that direction, shouting that only weaklings hide. The guy who was lifted into the air by the collar asked in horror how the hero found him. Was he really a B rank? The man smirked as he replied that he was actually hiding his true power. The guy, sweating profusely, asked to spare him and let him go, because today he lost. He promised to call the Divine Dragon Company, where the superhero would be offered a financial reward. Still holding his opponent in the air, Adam set a condition: only if he does not create problems and seek revenge after his release. However, he smiled because the green-haired one reminded him of something. He screamed in fear, asking what the man was going to do. Seeing that the man was staring at his groin, the guy squealed in fear. Was the superhero really gay? He then tried to establish contact and offered to talk calmly without violence. Adam smiled predatorily. He can not only teach the scum a lesson, but also eliminate resentment, hatred, and persecution from other people. After this incident, they will only find trouble for the superhero hot and sour noodles.